My name is Louis Aguilera. I'm a homicide detective for the LA County Sheriff's Department. By the time I was about 7 or 8 years old, I witnessed a homicide in my neighborhood. And at that young age, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go after those type of people.
Detective Louis Aguilera. He is an expert in homicide investigation. He has handled 350 homicides in his career.
Hey, Frank.
On the morning of October 8th, my partner and I saw breaking news
You catching this?
on one of the televisions in the office. And the breaking news said that a person was shot and killed. And my partner and I said, well, we're going to get this case.
He was up, as we say in homicide.
Aguilera.
Next case is his.
Within about 30 minutes or 45 minutes is when we got what we call the official call. And that gave us details of what happened.
All right, let's go.
So we immediately went out there. Once we arrived at the scene, we were briefed by the handling patrol deputy who told us that our victim was a 30-year-old female by the name of Veronica Reyes.
She is known to the workers there. They say she has children. They believe she is married and was apparently arriving for work when she was killed.
Co-workers said they heard the gunshots, came running out, found her.
She was an administrator at this logistics company, and as her coworkers like to say, she was the happiest, hard-working woman.
And we immediately noticed Veronica. She was laid on the ground, and her body was covered with a sheet.
When they see this woman, she's been disfigured by gunfire. She's shot twice in the head. One of those rounds broke her jaw, which distorts the face. Death distorts you as well.
I noticed that she had a lot of stippling on her face. That's the gunpowder and the metals and everything else projecting onto her face. And that's essentially a close gunshot wound. Our suspect was right on top of her. As I walked through the parking lot, there were numerous amounts of shell casings. We also saw that the windows had been shot out of the car, and there were bullet holes in her car as well.
They recover 8 expended casings from inside her car. Now they look at those casings and they are .40 caliber. The shooter is close enough to this car to when those expended casings come out of that gun, they go through the open window and wind up on the floor of the car.
So what do you think? Carjacking gone bad?
Not sure.
You always consider the possibilities as to how and why this occurred. Could it be a carjacking? No. Why not? Too much gunfire. No attempt at car theft. No attempt at anything. This is killing for the sake of it. Carjacking? Not a chance.
We got a second vehicle in the scene.
The patrol officers point out a truck that's been damaged minorly, brushed against or impacted in a bumper area, and then a shrubbery that's been crushed by what probably was a car. Is it connected to this crime? Probably it is.
Have we located any surveillance footage?
Not yet.
The street where the murder occurred is lined up with logistic companies, and logistic companies deal with freight. And by law, these logistic companies have to have surveillance cameras on their buildings. We were told that the murder was captured on surveillance video. You see on the footage Veronica pulling up to the parking lot in her red Explorer. As soon as she parks, a black, it looked like a BMW, pulls up and parallels her car. The driver immediately got out, forgetting to put the car in park.
The driver of the BMW is so intent on reaching his target, he bails out of a barely moving car as it is now moving backwards across this lot. He ignores the BMW. His focus is on who he wants to kill.
He ran up to her while she was still seated in the driver's seat and began firing numerous shots.
He plants his feet 20 inches apart for balance and proceeds to blast away.
The terror that I imagine Veronica was going through, that's what I remember when I first saw the video, was trying to put myself in her shoes, trying to think about what I would have done if I were being shot at.
She tried to put the car in reverse to get away, and at that point it was too late, and the car does what we call a death roll. It just rolled while she was deceased in the car and stopped once it hit a wall.
Then he realizes, once he's completed his shooting, that the car has wandered off, clipped the truck, and is stuck in the bushes. He runs back, he gets in the car, and disappears out of the lot, turning down the street.
You watch videos like that and you wish somebody could just tell her, don't go to work. Just don't. Stay out of that parking lot. It's really frustrating to watch.
The surveillance was good in that it showed us what happened. It showed us the type of car that was there. It showed us generally what the description of the defendant was, what kind of hat he had on, the shirt, the shoes he had on.
But you don't have a license plate. You don't have anything that stands out about that suspect. So we have a murder captured on video, but that's it.
Something to look for is that car. So Aguilera puts out an all points bulletin for a black BMW containing an unknown male who may be armed and dangerous.
The family of Veronica showed up. You have an obligation to talk to those people. It's stressful, but my priority not only is solving the case, but I want to take care of that family.
How can I help you?
I was talking to my sister on her cell when she was driving into work this morning, and it sounded like something bad happened. I heard this popping sound.
Suddenly, in the middle of that conversation, the sister hears, "Oh no, oh no," and she hears loud popping sounds, which we know to be gunfire.
Why don't we go talk over here?
Now, obviously, she doesn't know the end result of that "oh no, no" and that loud noise. Aguilera has to tell her.
Your sister was murdered.
Death notification is a horrible business, but a necessary one. When he does, it devastates her. He has to let her sit for a while before he can talk to her further.
Is there anyone that you can think of who might want to hurt your sister?
Our job as homicide detectives is to not only find out who your suspect is, but you want to investigate who your victim was. And I wanted to get a background right there on the spot, as quickly as I could, what was going on with Veronica's life.
Everybody loved her. She was a great mom. She was a great sister.
Me and my sister were very close. She brought us all together as a great mom, a good friend, an amazing sister. And I'm sure my parents would say the best daughter.
My mother was very, I don't know if bubbly is the right word, but she was a very personable person. She liked people. She loved to dance. She loved to laugh. She had the dorkiest laugh. And it was contagious.
She also shared 4 young children with her husband, Carlos, and she had been with Carlos for 9 years.
She met Carlos in high school, so they were pretty much childhood sweethearts.
Were they still together?
They separated not that long ago. Once she left Carlos, I encouraged her to get on with life.
She started to move on. You could see the independence. I was like, okay, you know, you can go be with your friends, you know, I got the kids.
Started dating. She saw a couple people.
So her sister tells Aguilera that Veronica started to meet other people, new people, in the past couple of months. Well, who are they?
I'm very, very sorry.
And could they be part of this? Of course they could. Because somebody certainly is, and it's somebody very close to the victim. People kill for a reason. We just don't know what reason yet. It certainly could be somebody she just recently started dating. The problem is, who is that? We are trying to determine who in all of Los Angeles could be the one who took Veronica Reyes' life. As Aguilera continues his search for someone new in Veronica's life, he hopes her autopsy will reveal more information.
I've got some results for you, Detective.
We learned that she had sustained 11 gunshot wounds, and 7 of those gunshot wounds were fatal. The fatal rounds came from the abdomen area. She had been shot in the head as well.
The weapon was a .40 caliber Glock.
There's no other weapon involved. There's no stab wounds, no second gun, none of that.
She also sustained a significant wound to the left forearm.
It looked as though it was a defensive wound that when she saw him approaching her car, as she put it into park, she raised her left arm to block whatever he was going to do to her.
The last seconds of Veronica Reyes' life was trying to defend herself, making sure that she was protected so that she could be there for her kids. But obviously that did not work.
We need to find Veronica's husband.
Carlos Reyes?
Yeah.
We have several reasons to talk to Carlos Reyes.
Her sister said she lost track of him after Veronica left him.
Number one, they're not divorced. They're separated. He has to be notified of the death of his wife. He now has 4 children to raise and be responsible for. Secondly, what exactly were the circumstances of your separation? And is he aware of anyone Veronica has been dating? So Aguilera does what every policeman does. You get a name, you run the name in the system. Has he been arrested somewhere by anyone? Has he been in prison before? Who is Carlos Reyes?
Look at that.
Well, when Aguilera runs that name through the system lights up. Carlos is a frequent flyer. Carlos is a gangbanger. He belongs to the Wilmas, the oldest Hispanic gang in South Central LA, who are hopelessly dangerous.
I worked 12 years as a gang detective before I came to homicide. And the gang culture in LA is huge. Predominantly Black and Hispanic gangs, and they're everywhere in LA.
Let me just tell you, it's a scourge on society. I mean, it is a syndicate. The drug sales culture, the guns culture, the violence culture, and there are no sacred cows.
This area, South Central Los Angeles, Compton and the area surrounding it, is high crime. It always has been. It has an enormous influence of gang activity. There is drug sales and use, and there is violent crime that goes with it. Los Angeles and Los Angeles County has always suffered from gangs. Gangs have been around for thousands of years. The Chinese Tongs, the Yakuza in Japan, La Cosa Nostra in Sicily, all kinds of gangs. They form because they are able to provide something the person is not getting at home, which is love, respect, acceptance, discipline, a sense of purpose, all the things that humans enjoy, the sense of belonging to someone. What they demand in return is absolute loyalty to a criminal enterprise. You're willing to provide that loyalty to gain all those other things. Gangs are a social problem brought on by lack of parenting, misunderstanding, and all the other things that go wrong with society. The results are criminal enterprises. Those gangs in the 70s and 80s made the decision they should be like General Motors. They should franchise. And they began going around the country, starting up little groups of Crips and Bloods and other people to sell their narcotics. And the OGs, the original gangsters of the Crips and the Bloods, became the corporate board members who became incredibly wealthy, selling narcotics across the United States. But a very common thing in Los Angeles and Los Angeles County.
There are a ton of rivalries amongst gangs, but if you were to ask a young gang member, hey, why do you hate that gang across the street? I can guarantee you he won't have the answer. All he knows is he was born and raised to hate those people across the street because they have a different gang name.
So what are you thinking? Revenge attack from a rival gang?
Maybe.
Aguilera begins to wonder, what if Carlos has aggravated somebody from some other group, another street gang, who decides that not only Carlos needs to go away, but his whole family does?
We need to check in on Carlos Reyes.
What if they killed Veronica to show Carlos they mean what they say?
You see gang affiliation on the part of your spouse, you start looking. You start going out on the streets. You get your gang unit to go out and start asking questions.
So Aguilera sends cruisers right away to the Reyes home to make certain there's no gang activity around those houses.
LA County Sheriff's Office coming to the door.
I wanted them to get into that house and make sure I didn't have any other victims. So we sent detectives to his house to do a safety check.
Aguilera.
Hey, Chief.
They went into the house, no one was home. They checked for any additional victims.
Place is empty.
And they didn't find anyone.
I think he has some family nearby.
We found out from Veronica's family that he had a sister and a mother, local.
Go pick him up. I want to talk to him.
And I sent detectives down there to go talk to them and bring them to the local station.
Thanks for coming in.
They both knew when I spoke to them that the murder had occurred. They also were somewhat evasive when I asked them questions regarding Carlos and his whereabouts.
When's the last time you remember seeing him?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Or if they knew anything that had happened.
There's mother, you're telling me you don't know where he is?
It's the usual answer you get from people who don't want to be involved in something. But where's Carlos? Well, I don't know. I don't remember where he went. Really? Your own brother? You don't know where he is? Of course she knows. But she's not going to tell you.
Thank you very much for your time.
I didn't feel that either one of them was very helpful during the interview. So we didn't learn much from those interviews. But as a homicide detective, you have to exhaust every avenue of your investigation. We needed some more evidence.
Detective Aguilera is one of those individuals who leaves no rock unturned. He finds every piece of evidence, and in this case, he learned that one of the responding deputies noticed a abandoned black BMW around the corner from where Veronica was shot to death.
Aguilera put out a be on the lookout for her, and a patrol officer sees this BMW black,
Stormy detectives.
calls it in, and says, I think this is the car.
This is our car?
Yeah, it even has the damage on the bumper, like you said.
We saw the traffic collision damage on the car, which was perfectly aligned with what happened at the scene. The vehicle actually still had some shrubbery on it from running into the bushes.
Aguilera looks at it and says, there's no question. That's it. That's the one.
Call the DA for a warrant for the inside.
Yes, sir.
This could contain fingerprints, DNA, weapon, ammunition, who knows? It's the shooter's car, there is no doubt. But who is the shooter? Aguilera and his partner get a warrant to search the car. They find beer cans, a bunch of other crap, junk, clothing.
Well, then they notice there's a man's wallet in this car. Okay, this is really strange. Somebody forgot to take their wallet.
They open that wallet, and there is a California driver's license and photograph of Carlos Reyes.
The same Carlos Reyes who was married to Veronica, but that still doesn't say anything. They don't know if there was another person who drove that black BMW.
And it didn't make sense to me that those items were left in the car. Why were they left in the car?
So then they start thinking third party. Okay, so maybe he was held at gunpoint and maybe someone else killed his wife. Who knows?
They also find a receipt in this car for a hotel room in the area, and the receipt is dated 1 day before the homicide, and the name in this receipt is Paige Sanchez.
So now our concern is, where's this female? Let's find out who she is, and let's get to that casino and start looking at some surveillance footage.
So they go to this hotel, and they talk to the manager that was on duty. Said, yeah, she came in, she paid for the room, and there was a Hispanic guy with her.
The manager walked us into their surveillance area, and we were able to see Carlos and this female arriving in the casino. The thing that stood out to us, he carried a metal box with him. It looked like a gun box, like an ammunition box. And it was just the night before the murder.
Then you can see them going to the elevators.
He was affectionate with this female. They obviously knew each other, hugging each other in the elevator. Our question is she involved in this homicide?
Then you see them early that morning walking out of the casino, out of the hotel, and the girl getting into a taxi and leaving. And then later you see Carlos leaving.
Aguilera sees the circumstances. Does he know what they mean? No, he doesn't. And he's smart enough to know that. He requires further inquiry, as they say.
Yeah?
Hi, I'm Detective Aguilera.
When they first meet Paige Sanchez, she's somewhat alarmed at their presence.
Do you know Carlos Reyes?
Yes.
We found a receipt for a recent hotel stay. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that with us?
We were just there for the weekend.
She seems rather surprised, and that surprise seems to be genuine. Point for her side.
You do realize that Carlos is married.
Yes, I do know that.
Do you also know that his wife was just murdered?
What?
She was upset. She knew they were separated, but she also knew that they had children. And that was a concern to her, that there were 4 kids with no mother.
I've only really known him for like 3 months.
She told us that they had been drinking for the last several days. She said they went bar hopping.
She admits to sheriffs they were drinking, gambling, partying, having a great time. But on the morning that Veronica will be killed, he's up at 7:03 in the morning with a beer in his hand. And they're checking out of this casino hotel.
Once we said goodbye, it was kind of weird.
What do you mean?
She said he seemed as if he was never going to see her again. In the sense like, thank you for everything. I appreciate you. And he made her feel as if that was the end of their relationship.
It was a goodbye that she described as kind of strange. There was a lot of indication that he was going to do something out of the ordinary.
We believe that she had absolutely nothing to do with this homicide, but we believe that he was saying his final goodbye because once he left there, he was going to kill Veronica and he was going to flee.
So they go back to the sister again about the relationship between her sister Veronica and Carlos.
I just have a few questions.
She never told me everything, but towards the end, she told me some stuff.
Yeah, things between them were getting really, really bad.
I know that Carlos stole her bag from her like a week or 2 before that. I know he busted all the windows in her car. That's when we're like, wow, okay, this is not good.
And the sister tells Aguilera that Carlos has been abusive, so much so this caused her sister to file for divorce.
Why do you keep doing this? To sum up my relationship with Carlos, I knew he was my dad, but he was Carlos. I could always tell when Carlos was gonna start fighting with my mom. He would get this look in his face, he would get very aggressive. He would ball up his fist. He was very explosive. He had a tendency of breaking down doors, punching through walls. When he was in a real fit or whenever he was drunk or high, my siblings and I would push our drawer against the bedroom wall and we would just stay in there until he left.
In the process of the investigation, we learned that she filed for divorce approximately 11 days before she was murdered. And that in itself is an indication that she was ready to move on. It's an indication that she wanted to end the cyclical effects of domestic violence.
A couple days after the murder, we processed Veronica's car and we found several things that were heartbreaking to us. And one of them was a journal that Veronica kept. One of her entries had several strands of her hair taped to the day that Carlos pulled her hair out. And she wrote underneath that hair, "Carlos pulled my hair out."
As soon as she came to us and told us what was going on, my husband and I, we gave her the money for the divorce. We helped her to get out.
And there were several writings from Veronica in the journal. And one of them said, basically, get Carlos out of her life, essentially. Her notes are get divorced and away from Carlos, make money, live on my own, and change my way of thinking.
Veronica Reyes did all the right things to get rid of Carlos. She did. She thought it over. She made decisions. She obtained an attorney. She filed a restraining order against him.
It's just everything you tell a woman to do who's a victim of domestic violence.
She had had it. She was done. She was moving on with her life.
Veronica did everything she could. It was not enough. Two and two still makes 4 the last time I checked. Carlos is a gangbanger, which means he's got all the skills and all the necessary temperament to blast her to kingdom come. Aguilera gets his cell phone records.
We start getting alerts that his phone is on the 5 freeway going southbound.
Interstate 5 covers north to south, most of California. It's humongous. And it is the gateway to Mexico. It's obvious what he's doing.
And if he got to Mexico, we were concerned that we would never find him again.
He is trying to disappear into Mexico. If he crosses into that world, he may as well be in the cosmos. The hunt is now on for Carlos Reyes for first-degree murder. Aguilera gets his phone records, and it pings going south on I-5. And it pings stop at the border crossing at San Ysidro.
Now we have to do an alert.
I need to put out an APB.
And notify the authorities at the border. Hey, look for this person.
It's Carlos Reyes.
Here's a DMV photo. If you see him, please detain him for us. We didn't have confirmation that he actually made it, but we were pretty certain that he did. And the concern was that it's such a big country. There's so many places to hide, and we would never see him again.
At this point, all Aguilera can do is wait. But a Sheriff's Department gang unit detective knocks on his door.
Hey, might have some information for you.
What you got?
And the gang detective said, hey, I have an informant, and this informant knows where your suspect is at.
There are confidential informants who are in the business of making a little extra cash. They're not going to go to court. They're just going to tell you what's happening.
Yeah, he got caught the red light.
No kidding.
Once you go through the Mexican border, you either get a red light or a green light. It just randomly pops up.
And once they decide to search your car, they're going to find what's in it. They are not good at it. They are experts at it. They'll find your concealed compartment inside your gas tank. They'll find everything. And a weapon was found in a hidden compartment behind the stereo in his car.
The agents arrested him for bringing a firearm into Mexico.
The guy they stopped was called Arturo Lopez.
Lopez?
Yeah.
Our guy's called Carlos Reyes.
So is it Carlos Reyes or not? The informant says it is. Informants say a lot of things. But is this reliable? That's when Aguilera gets a hold of an agent that he knows and says, can you find this guy in jail?
Guillermo. It's Luis Aguilera.
I contacted Special Agent Guillermo Ion. He is an expert at tracking down people in Mexico. He has contacts in Mexico that we don't.
And thinking that maybe a different name was used, we started comparing all the individuals that had been detained or arrested for that suspected day, and eventually we found him under a different alias.
It was a really short turnaround where Guillermo said, I found your guy. He sent us the booking photo from Mexico. There was no doubt in our mind that the booking photo from Mexico was Carlos Reyes.
At the border, when that agent searched the car, the driver identified himself as Arturo Lopez. Not only does he get stopped, he provides false ID because he knows he's being looked for. Well, guess what, Carlos? You just got found.
I was thrilled, but I was concerned that we're now dealing with Mexico. He was sentenced that week to 5 years in prison.
Mexico is incredibly strict about its gun laws. You try to bring a gun illegally into Mexico, you will pay a price. They do not dance around. It's not a welcome wagon, like, come on in, American detectives, we'll do everything we can to help.
I was upset at it, but I know there was nothing that we had that was gonna bring him from his prison sentence in Mexico. Would we ever get Carlos back to the States?
Aguilera needs that gun to run some tests, and connect it to Veronica's murder. The problem is that gun is in Mexico, and the Mexican authorities are less than cooperative.
Is this gun that was found on the defendant the same gun that killed Veronica Reyes?
The firearms recovered at the border go to their military.
That gun was in the evidence locker of the Mexican military in Mexico here in Tijuana.
When we go down there, we have to make sure it's our murder weapon by firing it, bringing back the bullets and the casings to compare it to what we have here in LA.
They had a common process that is used. In this case, they used telephone books, the old traditional yellow telephone books that we all have.
Now, way back in the day, ballistics tests were performed with phone books. They'll stop bullets. But in the modern day, they don't have phone books. Except in Mexico, they still do. So the ballistics guy goes old school. And the ballistics man puts 3 phone books in a cardboard box and fires a round into the phone books. Boom! Into the box. Gets into that 3rd book, there's his bullet. It'll go through 2, but it won't go through 3. So unconventional, yes, but it works.
We then retrieved the casings and the bullets, and we took those samples back to the United States for comparison.
I remember driving back from Mexico, all of us, with the ballistic evidence and just hoping this has to be our murder weapon.
They compare the ballistics to the bullets removed from the victim.
So it was important to see the pattern that was on the bullet and see that the pattern matched what they found at the crime scene. It's sort of like a fingerprint.
Okay. Thank you.
I remember getting a phone call saying, hey, Louis, just want you to know, I am 100% certain it's your gun. Coupled with the evidence we built to that day, now we have him arrested with our murder weapon, made me feel a lot better about the case.
You look back over the events in this case, and you begin to get a very good idea of what took place. Veronica Reyes meets a man, Carlos Reyes. They marry. Progressively, his abusive personality begins to be exposed. It starts off verbally, making comments. Then the pushing and shoving happens. Then the slapping begins. And Veronica decides this is no way to live. She files for divorce.
And that is the ultimate slap in the face. For her to take that step and file for divorce, I think set him off.
Carlos is what he is. He's an abusive male. And abusive males have another feature of their personality. If I can't have you, nobody's gonna have you. You insulted me by divorcing me. I'm gonna take you out. He suffers emotionally when he's served. What's his response? Alcohol. Female companionship. But the alcohol grinds on him, lowers his level of inhibition.
The partying was just a cover for how mad he was. So I'm gonna hang out with this woman for 3 days, we're gonna have a big party, and I won't think about it. But then she keeps creeping into his mind, and he gets angrier and angrier.
Thinking about nothing but Veronica until it arrives at an emotional crescendo. He gets in that car, and he knows where to find her, and he shows up too.
We think he probably arrived at the scene early in case Veronica arrived to work early and just waited for her car to show up in that parking lot. She pulls up to her work, which should be a safe place. And she's killed by her husband. the father of her children. And then he flees to Mexico.
And is he really that stupid that he would leave a car registered to himself and his wallet in the car?
Mexico was not going to release him to our custody until he served those 5 years in prison. So now my concern is, how are we going to keep track of someone in a Mexican prison for 5 years?
Reyes, utilizing the level of corruption in the Mexican penal system, pays off guards to keep getting him transferred to different jails to make him more difficult to find.
Now the fear was making sure that Mr. Reyes did not potentially bribe his way out of jail, right? We're checking in with the warden, and they got to the point where I'll let you know if anything happens, but he's still here.
Eventually, as the release date neared, we made contact with our Major Crimes Bureau extradition team to work out the logistics of flying him back to the States.
They basically snatched him up from that prison, and then he's flown back from Mexico City to the United States in the custody of a U.S. Marshal.
I knew I wanted to be there when he arrived at the airport. Our major crimes team brought him off the airplane, and myself and my partner took custody of him at LAX. He didn't seem upset. He didn't seem sad, remorseful, nothing. Just as a matter of fact.
Welcome home, Reyes.
When do I go to court, was his question. And then we took him to a local station where we booked him for murder. Carlos was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder, stalking, the use of the firearm, and he was ultimately sentenced to 55 years to life.
This crime occurred on October the 8th of 2008. He isn't sentenced in a U.S. court until 2015, 7 years later.
Learning to cope, learning to be okay is something that I do every day, which is also why I wear her necklace, so that she feels closer to me, and it's how I feel closer to her. Because being without her is very, very hard. It hurt.
We pulled out money from our 401k, got a house that would house everybody, and within 2 weeks, they were out of foster care and they lived at home with us. I hope she's proud of what we've done.
I always have that thought in the back of my head that I wish I'd never handled this case because I wish it never would have happened.
There is a moment here where you throw a stone in a pond, but the ripples go on and on. 4 children that don't have a mother, who never really had a father. They are thriving now, but they all want their mother back, and she's never coming back.
Oregon, 1991. Rain on tin roofs. A 2-lane highway humming like a nervous vein. A phone rings in a kitchen with yellowed curtains. No one answers. The clock above the stove clicks louder than it should. Cold case seed planted in wet soil. A girl vanishes between a night shift and the first light. Name on flyers. Shoes by the door. Keys left on the ring. The town says coincidence. The town says she ran. The town is wrong. What they don't know, a storm has hands. It lifts, it moves, it hides, and it keeps secrets better than people. This is Graybridge, timber country, a place that smells like sap and diesel and coffee burned thin by midnight. In 1991, the mill whistle sets the tempo of mornings, the AM station argues about taxes, and the sheriff's radio coughs out static like a smoker trying to breathe. In a rental by the river, a cassette stops with a soft click at 12:03 a.m., the song frozen mid-chorus, the needle of a turntable still, like a compass that lost north. She was 22, not a local, not exactly a stranger. She checked groceries at the market on Elm, cleaned cabins up by Alder Lake on weekends, and carried a silver lighter engraved with initials that weren't hers. Lena Hart. A photo behind the counter shows her smile tilted like a question. The last person to see her says it was nothing. A routine ride home, a wave, a taillight turning left where the road bends toward the river. After that, fog, then rumors. then search parties that trample mud in widening circles until boot prints become a map of nowhere. Cold case. The headline writes itself. The town holds its breath and learns how long a breath can last. The sheriff sketches timelines on a diner napkin because the budget can't spare new memo pads. Someone calls the hotline to say they heard a scream near the trestle. Someone else swears they saw a black pickup idling by the bait shop with lights off. A third caller whispers that Lena had a boyfriend no one knew about, the kind who keeps quiet because quiet is control. The boyfriend denies. The pastor quotes Psalms. The FM DJ plays requests for Lena every hour on the hour, a ritual disguised as a playlist. Search dogs circle back to the same alder stump at the river's edge and lie down like they're tired of telling us the truth. The river pretends not to notice. Weeks fuse into months. Matt tick beyond. It lands like a nail. Graybridge straightens its tie, shaves, goes to church, nods at the empty pew where her mother refuses to sit because absence is heavier when you aim at it. The investigation is a series of locked doors with polite initials. S.A., P.E., J.B. Men who worked nights, men with sealed histories, men who paid cash for coffee and kept their eyes fixed on the sugar packets. Interviews blur. Every story sounds rehearsed even when it isn't. The sheriff stands on the bridge and pretends the wind in his face is progress. A fisherman finds a scarf caught on driftwood and the paper prints it like proof, then retractions, then nothing. Lena's lighter shows up in the weeds by the softball field 6 blocks from her place. The engraving is wrong in a way only she would notice. The H is nicked. The nick isn't random. It's a mark from a vice, a habit of someone who grips too hard. The evidence locker yawns. Plastic bags, labels with crooked handwriting. A stack of Polaroids where fog looks like a fingerprint and a fingerprint looks like fog. A town learns the etiquette of uncertainty. Parents hover. Teachers walk kids to cars. The night clerk at the gas station keeps a bat under the counter and checks the mirror every 7 minutes. People stop hitching. Doors grow new locks. The bait shop nails a warning to the door. Trust no one after dark. It becomes a slogan, then a joke, then a prayer. Quiet crimes copy loud ones. Threats multiply in whispers. The sheriff loses weight. He sleeps in his chair. He dreams of rivers that spit back what they take. The case file expands until the hinge cracks and the papers sag into a tired smile. Then the budget year rolls in like another gray morning and the county says later, meaning never. Cold case, stamped, shelved. The mother drives to Salem to talk to lawmakers because grief needs a job, and hers is to keep Lena's name from slipping into the cracks where names go to grow moss. She collects signatures in grocery store parking lots, in front of diners, outside high school football games where Friday night lights try to bleach the memory of a girl who went missing between the crowd and the quiet. Her hands shake, but not her voice. She uses headlines as knuckles. Sok Kongdong, Men Moi Ki La. Every year she tapes a new flyer to the river rail, glossy ink over rust, until the wind learns to move around it. Rumors molt. People say the sheriff had a brother who owed the wrong men. They say Lena was going to testify about something she saw behind the market one night. They say she left town because she finally could. The longer a blank stays blank, the more stories it devours. The truth shrinks to the size of a thumbprint on a Polaroid, and even that smudges. Decades pass. Graybridge grows another coffee shop, a few new roofs, a mural that fades faster than promised. The mill goes silent, then half open, then silent again. The river keeps the same voice. If you stand on the trestle at 3 a.m., it sounds like someone trying to remember a name. 2019, a box in the evidence room learns a new phrase: advanced processing, DNA, CODIS, swab kits removed from their sleep, cotton-tipped wands turned into barcodes. Budget finally shakes hands with science. Old cases stretch like people waking up from a cold nap. A technician with a braid like a rope finds a hair stuck to the adhesive of a bag labeled lighter, field 2. She smiles the way you smile when chance looks like work wearing a mask. She lifts, she amplifies. She calls a number that rings in a city far from Graybridge where someone says, yes, send it. The profile grows legs. The database blinks. A match pings like a heartbeat heard through a wall. Not a perfect song, but a chorus. The name it brings is old. Not on the sheriff's napkin, not on the gossip's list. A drifter who wasn't a drifter. A handyman with a paper trail that looks innocuous until you lay it against a map of missing girls from logging towns with the same kind of river and the same kind of bridge. He worked the cabins up by Alder Lake the same summer Lena cleaned them. He left mid-September for a job in Klamath Falls. He never came back for his last paycheck. The cabin owner kept the envelope in a desk drawer like a superstition. The corner of it tore off and fell behind the drawer where paper becomes dust. The desk moved houses twice. Still, the envelope survived. When they pry the drawer, the paper breathes. Inside, a stub with a greasy thumbprint. A second stub bent into a chevron. and a key that no door in Graybridge admits to knowing. The database does the wordless arithmetic. The drifter is no longer a rumor. He is a name with an address in 1991, a county in 2004, a traffic ticket in 2011, a prison intake in 2015 for an unrelated assault 3 states away. He paroled in 2019, 6 months before the ping. He lives now in a trailer with aluminum siding that mirrors heat. He feeds a dog whose ribs show like a barcode. He keeps a crate of tools organized by type, a discipline that looks wholesome unless you tilt it and catch the glare. The sheriff who kept the case alive is retired. Arthritis in his hands, a wedding ring that spins too easily when he's thinking. When the call comes, he stands in his yard with a hose and forgets to aim the water. It arcs into his shoes. He says one word his wife has never heard him say, and it isn't a prayer. He drives to the station, slower than anyone who's chased sirens for 3 decades. He sits while a detective, young enough to be his son, reviews the file he wrote as a young man. The old napkin isn't there because it disintegrated into memory long ago, but the pattern is. The detective says, "We have him." The retired sheriff says, "Have is a future tense." You don't know you have someone until a courtroom agrees. The arrest happens on a Tuesday, so plain it feels staged. The dog barks. The man opens the door and blinks like noon hurts. The warrant reads like a bookmark in a book someone finally returned. The cuffs click. The dog whines. Slow-motion shockwaves move through Graybridge, phone to phone, counter to counter, booth to booth. Cold case solved, the DJ says, voice catching, then clearing. Arrest shocks community. He plays the song that stopped on Lena's tape at 12:03 a.m., then kills the mic and cries into his sleeve because he's been speaking into this town for 30 years, and sometimes it speaks back with teeth. But solved is a word with edges. Evidence breathes differently after decades. Chain of custody is a glass bridge. Jurors prefer straight lines. Defense attorneys prefer rain. The state unpacks the boxes, the lighter, the hair, the pattern of work that summer. The envelope with the thumbprint that looks like a storm eye. The retired sheriff takes the stand in a suit that doesn't fit his new shoulders. He holds nothing, but it looks like he's holding a weight anyway. He remembers the river talk. He remembers the mother's flyers like flags that refuse to lower. He tells the jury what it's like to chase a shadow that knows your route. The defense floats alternate histories like paper boats. She ran, she drowned, she left. The river did it, the town did it. Everyone did and no one did. Reasonable doubt tries the door. The door sticks, the lab speaks. Not loudly, firmly. The match is not a handshake, it's a weld. The handyman's profile echoes in places it shouldn't. The map on the wall pins itself 3 times and the lines between pins look like a habit. In the gallery, Lena's mother holds a rosary that used to be her grandmother's. Her mouth moves without sound. The courtroom lights hum. The jurors file out. The clock above the seal says now in the way clocks do when they hit the end of a story. They come back, guilty. The word lands like rain finally choosing where to fall. The gavel taps. People exhale and start crying like they forgot how to do both at once. The retired sheriff wipes his eyes with the same hand he uses to salute the judge, a gesture he didn't plan and will remember as a joke the town told with tenderness. Solved, headline ink that dries fast. But what remains is aftershock, a bedroom still staged as a daughter's return, a bridge where people walk slower, a river that never learned how to give back whole. Graybridge returns to its routines, but every routine has a seam. You can feel it if you press. The mother takes the last flyer down and doesn't know where to put it, so she tapes it to the inside of a closet door and leaves it there like a mirror she doesn't want to look into yet. At night, the wind rattles the rail where paper used to flutter. The gap makes its own sound. It is not peace. It is something else. Justice is not a resurrection. It's a door that opens onto a hallway. You walk. You keep walking. You count steps until numbers stop helping. And still, the town says her name, not loud. Like a password you use to get back into your own house after years away. Cold case closed, yes. But in Graybridge, 1991 never stops raining. The verdict does not silence the river. It only gives it a new word to practice at night. And in that word, the town hears appetite, not closure. The day after the gavel, Graybridge wakes to a sky the color of notebooks left in the rain and discovers that solved is not synonymous with answered. Reporters peel off like swallows to other storms. The courthouse lawn returns to its usual gossip about potholes and school levies. But there is one detail that keeps humming in the background, a small metal ghost in a newscast of victory. The key with no door. It sits in an evidence tray in a lined envelope, stamped and initialed and tagged as if it were a scrap of meteor, a thing that fell from a faster sky. The retired sheriff drives to the station even though he isn't on payroll because some habits forget the word quit. He holds the envelope like it might start talking if he is quiet enough. On the radio, the DJ plays a soft song and tries not to say Lena's name every third sentence. He fails, and the failure is sweet. The detective who carried the case across the finish line doesn't mind the old man in the chair. He grew up in a world where old men in certain chairs mean the town is still itself. He pulls a map down and keeps it on the table instead of the wall. He puts the key in the middle like a compass point. It has a number stamped into the bow, not a brand, not a house cut, more like a locker, a storage unit, a padlock made to hang on chain link and guard silence. They call facilities. They call the cabin owner. They call a locksmith who has known the cuts that guard Graybridge's private lives for 4 decades. He winks, he frowns, he sets the key in his palm and whistles the way people do when they're about to lie kindly. Not local, he says, not any of mine. Looks like something you'd use at a place that needs you to forget what you stored. The word sends everyone's eyes toward the edge of town where a row of corrugated metal sheds crouch behind a tire shop. Storage, the sign says. The O like a mouth stuck in surprise. The retired sheriff and the detective drive out there with the locksmith and a warrant that still smells like warm paper. The manager is a man built like a filing cabinet, tidy and resistant to emotion. But the folder of old contracts is chaos, a paper avalanche in a cardboard cliff. They climb, they read, they find a name that is not the handyman's name, a box leased in June of 1991 under a cousin's cousin, a spelling that mistakes a K for a C, a phone that never connected, a note in the margin that says paid cash and draws a smiley face next to the amount like money might enjoy company. Unit 12, a number like the one on the key, except numbers are coy, they flirt with coincidence to make themselves feel important. The manager leads them down the row. The air smells like dust and mildew, the afterlife of cardboard. Unit 12 stares back with a corrugated eyelid and a padlock whose brand matches the locksmith's frown. The key slides in. It pauses the way breath pauses before a name, then turns. Metal clicks. Something inside says at last. The door rolls up with the practiced throat clearing of a secret about to become ordinary. What waits is not dramatic. No shrine, no trophies, no red string across a map, just boxes. Just a duffel whose zipper teeth grin at the light. A milk crate full of cassettes with handwriting and a strict, exhausted script. Work logs, receipts from hardware stores that live 3 towns away. A faded Polaroid of a dog that is not the dog he owns now. A pair of muddy rubber boots. A roll of chain. A length of nylon rope tied off in a knot that sailors and hunters call by names that do not belong here. The retired sheriff stands very still. The locksmith is already thinking in terms of value for the auction block that never came. The detective is thinking of Lena, of the river, of the way the tape clicked at 12:03. He puts on gloves that make his hands look like someone else's hands and lifts the duffel onto the concrete like it's a sleeping animal. Inside, more rope, a folded tarp that keeps the smell of wet wood even after all these dry years. A stack of photographs wrapped in wax paper the way bakers hide layers of sugar. The images are not of Lena, not directly, but they are of places she went. A turnout near Alder Lake where the guardrail bears the scars of 3 accidents from the late 80s. The path behind the market where the alley light flickers. The trestle from below where the piers flare into the water like the legs of a metal spider. The dates are wrong for memory, but right for pattern. The detective breathes through his mouth. He feels the shape of a net not cast but left in the water where fish teach themselves to swim around it until one doesn't. There's a receipt dated 2 days after Lena vanished from a gas station outside Klamath Falls, a place with a bathroom key chained to a paint-stained piece of lumber. There's an empty Ziploc with a label crawler, 110, a word that means nothing to him until he flips one of the cassettes and sees crawler 109 inked there. He thinks of insects, of tunnels, of something built to move where light doesn't. He thinks of logging machinery with nicknames men invent to make steel sound friendly. He thinks of the way the handyman organized his tools by type until the arrangement itself became an idea. They catalog, they photograph, they close the door and open a different one, the one that leads to other counties, other unsolved flyers with different girls who lived in the same shape of town. The state task force lights up, emails like sparks. Conference calls with cops who speak with different weather in their voices. The name ties to a trailer park in 1993 where a woman went missing between her laundry and her bedtime. It ties to a campground in 1990 where a tent was sliced open late and the night closed around the cut. The retired sheriff sits at the edge of the table, eyes on the key like he's still turning it. He knows how fast a solved case can sprout new shadows, how the word closure is a salesman with an easy grin. The mother hears about the unit before the news does because the detective knows what respect looks like. He tells her gently, and the gentleness hurts because gentleness is what you use with breakable things, and she has spent 30 years proving she is not that. She nods. She says, "Bring her home," meaning bones, meaning a ring, meaning a truth that fits in a hand. They bring in cadaver dogs and sonar and a man who reads ground like a second language. They grid the forest where the handyman spent his shifts, the cabins, the service roads, the places where heavy equipment sleeps when it isn't eating trees. The dogs wag like all work is play until they don't. They sit at the base of a stump with their tails flat, a flag at half-mast. The man with the sonar holds up a hand no one saw him raise. The retired sheriff listens to the earth and hears the small cough a secret makes when it considers excavation. They dig. They find a refuse of time. Bottle caps, an old license plate, a blue marble a kid lost decades ago and grieved for 5 minutes. Then a glide of white that is not rock, a curve made by something that once held the weight of a face. They kneel. The forest adjusts its breathing. The retired sheriff closes his eyes because his hands remember the heft of a skull in training, how professors joked to keep from whispering. He knows this might not be her. He knows it might be no one the town knows how to mourn. He knows they will take the bones and the dirt and the leaves and the insects that wrote commentary and carry everything to a room where death learns to explain itself. He opens his eyes and watches the detective do the work with a tenderness that is exactness wearing a mask. They don't say her name. Names belong to mothers until science calls. Back at the unit, they comb through the cassettes. Country songs taped off the radio, sermon snippets, a local game with a bad call immortalized in magnetized dust. Over a country chorus, sound carries that isn't music. A vehicle reversing and chirping in a rhythm that places it in a particular yard near Alder Lake. A dog barking the way dogs bark when strangers dig. The detective hears the logic of the handyman's life. Routes through the county disguised as errands. Pauses that line up with time cards, little erasures where a voice becomes road noise at just the right moment. He plays one tape 4 times and realizes the squeak in the background is the same squeak the trestle makes when wind comes from the east. He draws a red circle on the map with his finger because pens feel impolite around bones. The trial is over, the sentence fixed, but a parallel investigation blooms like mold in a damp house. The defense files motions that smell of smoke and delay. The handyman's lawyer complains about chain of custody, about keys that don't point to people, about maps that look incriminating because fear makes patterns. The judge sets dates. The news cycles yawn. But the town is awake now, and awake towns learn to haunt themselves productively. Teenagers who were toddlers when Lena vanished take turns placing stones at the river rail, each stone with a letter, until the name reappears in a row that the wind cannot tear. A woman who taught Lena 3rd grade spelling brings in a shoebox of old class photos and says, "Here, maybe it teaches you something I can't." As if grief decided to become a library. The retired sheriff walks in the mornings along the trestle and counts his steps because numbers are a bridge that doesn't sway. On the 4th morning, he stops where the rust blossoms into an iron flower and notices the way the water swirls differently near the left pier. It's nothing. It's everything. He calls it in anyway because calling it in is who he is, and the detective does not roll his eyes because listening is who he is. They send the sonar man and his raft, his quiet electronics, his patience. The river opens a hand and gives up a wheel rim, a bicycle frame, a supermarket cart that drove itself into a myth, and then it gives up a small, glittering thing lodged in silt like punctuation, a pendant with a scratched back, initialed in a way that is wrong unless you know about the nick on the H. The detective holds it in his glove and feels the weight of the lighter in his other memory. He feels the town inhale. The mother comes to the bank, not allowed to cross the tape, but close enough to see. She presses her fingers to her mouth and does not cry. She has done that already, more than once, and grief refuses to repeat itself simply to make audiences happy. She looks at the pendant like she is trying to decide whether objects tell the truth or just provide alibis for people. The lab will decide. Labs are cold temples where faith wears a lab coat. The detective hates the wait, but waiting is sculpture. It makes space where answers will stand. In the trailer park 3 counties away, the handyman's dog is fostering with a woman who bakes. The animal grows fat and friendly because sometimes Mercy visits the margins and refuses to leave. In a cell whose metal bunks teach back pain, the handyman writes letters that spiral between pity and pride. He does not mention a key, he mentions the weather. He mentions God the way men mention long-lost former friends. He addresses the old sheriff by name in one paragraph and asks if they still play the same song on the same radio at the same hour. The retired sheriff reads, snorts, folds, sets the paper under a mug. He does not give the letter the dignity of a drawer. He goes to the unit again in his head, rolling the door up on a loop. He keeps thinking about a gap on the shelf, a rectangle where dust did not settle as thick, the ghost of something removed just before absence turned into evidence. He tells the detective. The detective calls the manager. The manager shrugs, heaves, bumbles through his files again, and finds a pink copy of a work order from August 1991. Pest control in Unit 12. Access provided to tenant. Tenant provided own key. A scribble that might be an initial, might be a spider taking a walk. Pest control is still in business. They keep records like surgeons. The tech who visited the units in that summer moved to Arizona in 2002 and died in 2017, but his forms read like a diary written by someone who spent his life giving chemicals names. He notes, Unit 12, tenant observed reorganizing boxes, removed one large plastic bin to vehicle, padlock resecured by tenant. The retired sheriff flips the page as if time were a thing you could flip. The detective circles one large plastic bin. He sees a horizon where hope drives a stake into the ground and ties a string to it. Where did it go? Not storage, not dump. They scan traffic cams that didn't exist. They knock on the memory of the tire shop clerk who smokes under the no smoking sign for effect. He remembers the tenant's truck, an old Chevy with a white cap and a sticker of a fish eating a smaller fish that eats a smaller fish. He remembers because he liked the sticker and because his divorce was fresh in August of 1991, and he was noticing everything as if detail might save him. Went north, he says. Not south, back toward Alder, back toward the lake. The lake again, the cabins again, the road that knows the tires of men who think they can vanish because trees grow tight and phones don't ring reliably. They fan out. They canvass old neighbors, the kind who watch through curtains for sport and for savings. A woman with rollers in her hair says she remembers a white-capped truck with a squeaky rear leaf spring because she could hear it at night when she kept the windows open to save on light bills. It went to the last cabin, the one the owner fixed up for honeymooners, she says. He put fairy lights along the deck. It looked like the catalog said a life should. The cabin is still there, retired into private use for holidays with matching pajamas. The owner is apologetic, then cooperative, then apologetic again. They climb the deck. They look behind the romance. Under the boards is a crawl space where spiders made family trees and mice wrote poems in pellets. The cadaver dog lies down so fast it looks like he fell. The man with the ground sense lifts his head like the earth whispered yes. They unscrew the boards one careful piece at a time. The smell that rises is sweet and wrong, the smell of secrets turning into air. Bones again, but more of them, arranged by gravity over decades, lined with the green memory of copper that once lived in blood. There is a ring too, not gold, a twist of cheap metal with a fake emerald. The mother confirms it with a single nod that is not a nod, it is a permission. The lab confirms it with numbers that tuck themselves into each other until doubt suffocates. The town spreads a different headline over itself like a blanket. Found. Not found whole, not found easy, but found. The retired sheriff sits on the deck steps in the evening light while the detective finishes the paperwork that turns discovery into history. The fairy lights are rusted, dead. The nails in the boards are small iron moons. A loon calls on the lake as if voice were something that works better in pairs. The retired sheriff thinks about the key and the door and the decade of breath that lived between them. He thinks about the handyman organizing his life into containers, believing that if you keep your rope neatly coiled, your sins do the same. He thinks about the town and its slogans, about the poster that used to flap on the river rail and the gap it left behind. The gap is smaller now, not gone. Gaps never go. They become part of the architecture. The DJ plays the song again at 12:03 because rituals do not stop when their reasons end. He says Lena's name and then lets silence hold her. In court, new charges assemble like weather. Other counties send deputies with faces that carry their own rain. The handyman stares at the table. He chews the inside of his cheek until he tastes copper. He asks for a Bible. He does not open it. The judge reads. The retired sheriff watches. The detective feels tired in a way that sleep does not repair. After, the mother steps into the hallway and exhales a gust of years. The town walks slower now across the trestle, but it walks. It looks down at the river and sees a surface that finally reflects its own face back without distortion. When the wind comes from the east, you can still hear the trestle squeak. It is not a ghost. It is maintenance asking for a screwdriver. The key goes back into its envelope. The envelope goes into a drawer that closes with a click you could mistake for a full stop. It isn't. It's a semicolon. The sentence continues, as all living sentences do. Graybridge learns to pronounce relief and sorrow in the same breath and treats the ability like a skill worth keeping sharp. On a Sunday that smells like wet cedar, the retired sheriff stands with the detective at the river rail and watches the pendant glint against the current, where someone tied it with a ribbon to a nail and whispered something that might be a prayer and might be a promise disguised as one. They do not speak. They do not need to. The river says what it always says, remember, which is the closest word water has to love. The town practices a new ritual without announcing it. People pass each other in the aisles and say her name as an action, the way you say sweep or lock or breathe. Store windows add a single white flower in a jar next to the register as if commerce needs to stand at attention. The river keeps doing its river work. The news trucks leave, trailing their own weather, but Graybridge learns to broadcast itself in quiet ways. A pendant tied to a nail, a photo retaped because the tape can't be trusted, a dog-eared flyer kept under a magnet like a saint card. The handyman's name circulates like a currency everyone wants to be rid of, and still it buys moments of silence when it lands on tongues. A line from the verdict echoes, pattern consistent with. It clings to the courthouse brick like fog that doesn't want to move on. Cold case closed, but not cold. Heat gathers in the places he touched, the cabins, the lake road, the hardware aisles where rope waits and tarps blink their soft blue. People rearrange their lives around those aisles like they're avoiding a person who might turn a corner at any time. The detective sleeps and wakes and can't find the seam between. His dreams are paperwork set to weather, affidavits that thunder, maps that rain. He replays the storage unit door rolling up, the patient grin of the duffel, the cassettes with their strict handwriting, crawler 109, 110. He hates that word without knowing why. He calls his father, who swung a hook for 30 years and speaks fluent steel. Crawler's a track machine, the old man says, throat full of creosote and memory. Skidders, loaders, dozers. Some guys use numbers as nicknames. You get a run of machines on a site, you call them by their unit tags, not their names. 109, 110, keeps the chatter simple on the radio. The detective looks at the map pinned like a hide on the wall. He traces the old logging spurs the county stopped maintaining when budgets forgot how to count past immediate. Many spurs wear numbers that never made it onto tourist maps. A cluster north of Alder Lake has a spur the old-timers still call 110, even if signage died 20 years ago. He was out there. He named it. He recorded it. He turned a number into a habit. The detective circles it as if ink presses better when you finally understand the label. They drive the spur in a county rig with springs that speak in squeaks. Fir and hemlock lean in like they want to hear the plan. The retired sheriff sits in the passenger seat because retirement is a word for people who stopped being interested, and he hasn't. He points where the crown of the road tells you who graded it last. And it wasn't the county. A private hand. A man who wants to keep access alive for reasons that need shadows. The spur ends in a landing where logs once stacked like toothpicks in a giant's pocket. Now there's a fire ring made of stones too round for this elevation, a beer can with the old pull tab a kid might collect for the novelty, tire ruts that overlap until prints become braids. The cadaver dog sniffs boredom and joy, then sits, head tilted, not now, but once. The sonar man is no use here. But he walks the ground anyway, reading the way ferns choose their addresses, the way moss climbs only so high up the stump before it decides this is enough. He points to a rectangle where the ground sinks by a whisper you feel more than see. A bin once sat here. Weight compresses differently than time. They dig with respectful haste, a contradiction you master in jobs like this. The shovel rings against rock, roots, tin. They find the outline of plastic without the plastic, a ghost box in the soil, and a scatter of objects that fell from hands that weren't careful or were in a hurry. A screw with paint on half its thread, green like the cabin's old trim. A twist tie gone brittle. A fragment of newspaper with a baseball score you can date without a calendar if you lived here then. It isn't treasure. It isn't a body. But it's a stage direction. The detective stands and looks past the landing, past the drop, and feels the map inside his head redraw the way you redraw a memory when someone reminds you of the joke you forgot. If he removed a bin here, Unit 12, Pest Control Day, August 91, and went somewhere he could dump without the road telling on him, where? Down is easy, water is greedy, the gorge below twists into a slot where spring runoff carves a throat. You don't need a map to find a mouth that hungry. They hike down a game trail that remembers deer better than boots. The retired sheriff moves slower, knees narrating, breath steady. He will not be told to stay in the truck. The creek at the bottom is clear, but not innocent. The detective reads the way jammed logs make ponds just long enough to collect what people didn't mean to keep. He sees a smear of blue half under a rock and thinks tarp, thinks coincidence, thinks don't be stupid, then puts a hand in anyway, because curiosity learned to wear gloves. It's tarp. It's not the tarp. It's a piece cut by a hand that measured once and guessed twice, the way men do when they're trying to make something fit that doesn't want to. They bag it, because bagging is easier than arguing with the part of your head that will worry all night if you didn't. The unit gives other gifts. The cassettes become a calendar nobody asked for. Scene noise logs place him at the cabins on nights he told a boss he was home and asleep. A chirp of a reversing loader tags an hour. A whistle in the background belongs to a mill shift that changed after 92. The tape captures the older schedule. It is proof disguised as trivia. The defense calls it pareidolia. The judge calls it admissible. Other counties begin to arrive in ones and twos wearing their own rein, asking to borrow the key that opened Graybridge. A deputy from across the mountains brings a photo of a woman whose absence learned to sit at family tables for 3 decades. The handyman worked there too. Not cabins, a dam project, crawler country. The handwriting on her sister's old note says, "Last seen after late shift, bridge, fog, then rumors." Like a traveling carnival, grief repeats its tricks until you begin to predict them, and it still hurts. An envelope arrives at the station with no return address and a stamp so old it's quaint. The retired sheriff opens it because this is still his town, whether the paycheck believes it or not. The postcard inside carries a photograph of Alder Lake in winter, the kind of image you buy in a gas station rack when you want to send evidence you were somewhere real. On the back, block letters, "You found one door. Others are painted shut." It's not the handyman's hand. He writes like he's ashamed of his own curves. This is tidy, tense, someone trying to be helpful while daring you to suspect. The detective tastes aluminum in his mouth. Accomplice is a word that rearranges the town's rooms. Or a prank. Or a ghost with a pen. They log it. They lift prints. The paper offers only the clean confidence of a gloved sender. The postmark is 3 towns over, where a highway motel rents by the week and privacy is sold in the vending machine aisle, alongside sodas and stale chips. They check the motel anyway because habit is faith, dressed as routine. The clerk is friendly in a way that feels like a defense against the opposite. He remembers a man who paid cash, stayed 2 nights, watched weather reports in Spanish at high volume, and left nothing but a ridge in the bedspread and a neat line of takeout trays in the trash. Cameras died last year in a power blink. The detective stands in the doorway of the empty room and hears the old radio song the DJ plays at 12:03, a superstition now, an oath. He feels ridiculous and refuses to stop feeling. He wants a world where ridiculous and necessary shake hands. At the river, the community builds an altar that doesn't announce itself as such. A bench from the shop class, a plaque paid for by bake sales, a line from a psalm amended by a teenager with a pocket knife into something that belongs here. Remember and keep going. Headlines that used to wound now act like stitches. Cold case cracked, hidden cash, locker key, found at lake cabin. They stack into a column that feels like a spine. The mother comes at dusk when people pretend not to notice each other, touches the new wood like checking a fever, and sits. She doesn't speak to the detective when he stands a polite distance away. She doesn't need to. He tells her anyway, what most men save for bars, that he hears the squeak of the trestle in his head when he tries to fall asleep, that he bought the same brand of coffee she liked from the market once and poured it out because the smell made his chest feel like it was full of bees. She looks at him and says, "Keep going," and it sounds less like an order and more like a weather report. Rain, sun breaks, keep going. They reconstruct the handyman's last summer with receipts, job logs, the noise of his tapes, and the math of fuel. He drove out to Spur 110 on the pest control day because the storage manager's copy says so, and because the tire shop clerk remembers the fish eats fish decal, and because the road remembers him the way roadbeds do when weight repeats. He removed a bin. He came back lighter. What does a man take away from a unit when he knows attention is about to arrive? Not trash, not trophies, something that incriminates without explanation. The defense suggests tools, a chainsaw he loved, a box of porn he would be embarrassed to have cataloged. The detective nods because putting stupid ideas on the table makes room for the real ones to breathe. The retired sheriff stares at the photograph of the unit's shelf and the ghost rectangle where dust didn't settle and sees something small you could miss if you didn't live your life squinting at details. A faint drag mark leading across the plywood from the center toward the lip, narrow as a finger. Rope length hauled? No. A handle from a container with wheels. The kind of bin a man uses when he knows he'll be alone and doesn't want to lift more than he has to. They pushed the bin theory up against physics. Could he roll it from Unit 12 alone? Yes. Down the short grade? Yes. Lift it into the bed of an old Chevy without a helper? He's strong, but gravity is an opinionated partner. He would have used a plank. He would have backed up close. He would have left a rut in the dust outside the unit. The manager, embarrassed by the sloppiness of the files, perks up like a dog offered a familiar word and produces a Polaroid he takes of every unit after pest treatments, a habit that saved his job once when a tenant lied about damage. The photo of Unit 12 shows a faint diagonal scuff outside the door, a scratch in the gray film of dust. Small mercy, the camera caught. The scratch is the width of a board. He planned. He rehearsed. He choreographed his crimes like a dance he would only perform once. That makes other dances likely. They return to the cabins with a warrant that is both broom and key. The honeymoon deck where they found bones becomes a classroom. The joists are numbered in pencil from the first installation. Under one, the detective finds a smear of something like grease mixed with the black-green of old sap. He touches it with the edge of a swab. It smells like chain oil and river. The lab later tells him there's nothing to lift, nothing to match, and still the smell feels like a sentence finished under his tongue. Behind the last cabin, near the shed where spare shovels stand like an honor guard for the ordinary, they find a toolbox the current owner says came with the place, painted over twice by men who believe paint resolves history. Inside are sockets and wrenches and the proprietary little tools you only need if you work on track machines. The lid has scratches that are not random. A man bored on a lunch break, a man who learns with his hands, a man who hates silence, took a nail and etched numbers into metal under the paint they clean carefully until the digits breathe. 44, 1279, 122.1786, and then a second set, and a third. Coordinates. Not precise by modern standards, precise by a man measuring with a map that predated everybody's pockets learning GPS. The first set drops a pin on spur 1 and 10's landing. The second graces a turnout 3 ridges over. The third points nowhere anyone in the room wants to visit. A quarry the county closed after 2 teens drowned in '88, where cold water holds itself like a grudge. They stand at the lip of the quarry and listen to the way sound returns slower than you send it, as if the whole edits your words before giving them back. The lake in the quarry is the wrong color, a blue you don't trust except in candy. Divers gear up, faces turned clerical by neoprene. The mother does not come here. The retired sheriff wishes she had asked to, and is grateful she didn't. He sits in the shade of a scrub pine and feels his bones narrate again. The detective watches the surface for the tremor that means a story is surfacing and hates himself for wanting it, for craving the closure that will carve someone else open. One diver rises, cradling a shape that can't be mistaken for anything but a human prompt. Not a body, not today, a crate, the kind with holes in the side that make lifting paradoxically easier and harder. Inside, wrapped in the argument of 2 tarps and a blanket with a team logo out of date, is a roll of clothing, a purse fossilized into its own outline, and a wallet swollen with water. The ID inside belongs to a woman from the Dam Project County. Her sister's photo rides a bus across the mountains and arrives in a room where the detective lays the wallet out like an offering. The sister touches the plastic window where a face smiles forever in 1990 and makes a sound that isn't crying and isn't laughter, it's a bridge. You cross it or you don't. Headlines adjust again, like towns do when weather shifts. Quarry yields cash, map scratched under paint, coordinates tell all. The talk radio host who used to warm his seat with outrage practices reverence. The defense files something with the elegance of desperation. The handyman stares into a place only he can see and starts to look older the way men do when their lies run out of scaffolding. The postcard writer goes quiet, or retreats into whatever hole attention dug for him. The detective adds 3 new pins to the map. He uses a different color because counting demands ceremony even when you pretend it doesn't. The retired sheriff folds the postcard and puts it in a book of poetry his wife bought him once to civilize his nights and never opened. He hides it in the only place the town won't assume he hid it. He reads lines out loud to a house that learned to be patient while trucks idled in the drive. He hears the river in the pauses. He lets the silence finish the couplets. In the classroom of this case, every small object lectures. The key taught access. The cassette taught route. The pendant taught presence. The toolbox lid teaches intention. He was cataloging the places where he needed to remember what he did not want to forget. It is not a confession. It is worse. It is pride. The detective recognizes the handwriting of a man who planned to revisit, to polish fear until it shone, to stand on a landing and measure whether the world had found him yet. He cannot sleep and returns to Spur 110 at dawn without telling anyone. The road is a scar, the fog is a curtain. He stands at the landing and says Lena's name once, then the woman from the dam project, then another, in a voice that aims at the ground and sinks. He surprises himself and answers like an anchor answers, by holding. He pulls his notebook and draws the rectangle of the ghost bin in the dirt like a stage direction you obey without knowing why. His phone buzzes. It's the lab. A trace under the paint on the toolbox lid, microscopic plastic, a kind used in marker caps from a brand the hardware store stopped carrying in '93. The lid had been traced over. The coordinates weren't only scratched, they were inked, then scratched again. He rehearsed even his memory. He rewrote his own map until the metal carried the grooves of obsession. A loon calls from nowhere a loon should be, and the detective looks up. On the opposite ridge, a glint, not water, glass, binoculars. For a second, the world holds its breath the way the town learned to. He raises his hand slowly, palm open as if greeting something that thinks it is wild. The glint murmurs, then vanishes. Not a ghost, a person, a watcher, painted doors, others. The headline writes itself in his head, and he hates that fact, and he writes it anyway because that's how you survive the speed of a town trying to outpace its fear. He texts the retired sheriff a single word, eyes, and the old man texts back what you send when a sentence has to continue, on my way. The retired sheriff drives without the radio. The silence is surgical. Trees close in like an audience holding breath. The air smells like tin, rain, and old fuel. He turns off his headlights for the last quarter mile, a habit he hasn't needed in years, but reflexes don't die when you've hunted ghosts this long. He parks behind a stand of alder, listens. The forest hums its low machinery, wind through needles, a drip off branches, the soft click of cooling metal. Then another sound, almost polite, boots over gravel, not hurrying, not hiding, just existing where they shouldn't. He kills the engine, waits. The detective stands on the landing, visible through the fog like a photograph developing too slowly. The sheriff steps out, doesn't call his name. A figure moves on the ridge above. Just a silhouette, narrow shoulders, binoculars gleaming for half a breath before vanishing behind the timberline. "Who?" the sheriff says when he reaches him. The detective's answer is breath on glass. "Watcher, gone." They both look up. The fog rearranges itself, mocking the notion of certainty. The ridge is now a smear. The trail up there cuts through shale, steep and slick. If someone climbed it, they knew the ground. Locals know the ground. Outsiders leave bruises on it. The sheriff adjusts his coat, studies the fog, hears the absence of footsteps fade like a memory unspooling. He feels old again, but in the kind of way that reminds you you're still alive. They climb anyway. Every step is a small argument with gravity. The slope holds cigarette butts crushed into the dirt, fresh. Not the handyman, he's locked away, but someone who inherits the same habits. Camel filters, the kind men buy who think quitting is betrayal. They find a soda can half buried under a root. New logo, new time. Someone's been here recently enough to shop at a convenience store with fluorescent lights and plastic smiles. The sheriff picks it up, wipes the rim with a cloth. A partial print. They bag it. The detective takes photos, angles low to catch the pattern of boot prints leading to a boulder that overlooks the landing like a balcony built for ghosts. The view below is exact. You could watch a man stand there and not be seen. The binoculars weren't nostalgia, they were surveillance. At the station that night, fluorescent light washes everyone the same color, fatigue gray. The lab runs the print, no match in local, they send it upstate. Meanwhile, the detective replays the tapes again, hunting for a detail he missed when he thought the case was finished. The sound of a truck door closing in one of the cassettes. Faint, yes, but behind it, a whistle. Not from the mill this time. A human one, off-key, a habit. The retired sheriff whistles absent-mindedly when he reads reports. It's different. This one loops 3 notes again and again until they turn into background static. He isolates it, runs it through audio cleanup. A pattern emerges, a rhythm, Morse. Accidental or deliberate, he doesn't know, but the pauses are too neat. He scribbles letters, ALDER, then break, then LK. Alder Lake. The handyman recorded his own hiding place, or someone else wanted him to. They return to the cabins in daylight because fear looks different under sun. The lake's surface is a mirror that refuses reflection, just glare. The detective stands on the dock where honeymooners take photos now and feels the weight of everything under the surface pressing back. A diver team is scheduled for another pass tomorrow, but the sheriff wants something tangible before more bureaucracy buries the truth. He walks to the tool shed, the one they found the toolbox in, and runs his hand along the inside of the wall. The boards are double-layered, old trick for insulation, newer trick for concealment. A screwhead gleams newer than the rest. He fetches a screwdriver. One turn, then another. Wood sighs like an old secret giving up. Behind the panel, nothing grand, just another cassette. Label, 111. Beneath it, a photo sealed in a bag. A man's face, mid-40s, grease under nails. Eyes that look at the lens like he's reading whoever's behind it. They bring it back, play the tape. Static first, then the hum of a truck idling, then voices. Male. 2. The handyman's low and careful, and another, sharper, younger, local accent with that river drawl. They talk about the bins, about getting them up north. The younger one laughs when the older says, "Don't name it." Then, "We split the lakes." Tape cuts off with a slam, then silence. The room swells with it. The sheriff leans forward, whispers what they both think but hate to hear aloud. There was more than one. The younger voice, he could still be out there. Not legacy, not a copycat. An accomplice who watched, learned, waited, aged into a shadow. If he's alive, he's seen the news. He knows the old man took the fall alone. Maybe guilt brought him to the ridge, maybe curiosity, maybe arrogance. The detective opens the file from the early days. Interviews dismissed as noise. One name resurfaces, a logger named Sam Rooker, 22 in 1991. Worked 3 months at the cabins, quit without notice. No one followed up. He fit every silhouette. Small, fast, vanished. They dig deeper. Rooker never left Oregon. Minor charges, DUIs, a bar fight in 2004, then nothing for 10 years. A background hum of normalcy that smells too neat. The last known address, a trailer off County Road 7 near where the trestle bends. They drive there that evening. The air has that metallic quiet before storms. A dog barks from behind the fence, hoarse and uninterested. The trailer sits tilted, windows taped with cardboard. The mailbox rusted into unreadability. They knock once, twice, no answer. Third knock. The door gives a little, not locked, but swollen by humidity. Inside smells like dust and rot, the twin colognes of absence. Empty beer bottles, a cot with a hollow the size of a man who didn't sleep right. A small table stacked with old newspapers, local obits, clipped articles about the cold case, yellow tape photos printed off the internet. On the wall, maps, pinned with thumbtacks and twine. Circles on Alder Lake, Graybridge, Klamath, the quarry. Rooker's handwriting loops over each one. Bins done, not all empty. The refrigerator hums without power. Inside one thing, a Polaroid of Lena Hart, the same one the store used on flyers, except this copy has something written on the back. The detective reads it slowly, out loud. You picked the wrong one to leave behind. A phrase like that could mean pride or guilt or a threat. It changes tone depending on who reads it. The sheriff exhales through his teeth, eyes scanning for traps, tripwires, rigged photos, a confession disguised as warning. On the counter, a box of cigarettes, Camel filters, fresh, and a binocular strap coiled like a pet. They sweep the rest of the trailer. Closet empty except for a duffel with rain gear, boots with dried mud caked to the heels, soil sample in the soles, fine, red, not local. The detective bags it. Red clay means south. Klamath, maybe further. He calls the state lab again, asks them to cross-check Rooker's prints against the can they found near the ridge. Hours later, match. The watcher has a name. Alive, recent, moving. They issue a bolo, quiet at first because panic is a resource you spend sparingly. That night, thunder rolls without rain. The sheriff sits on his porch, radio on low, coffee going cold. The announcer mentions Graybridge again, says healing, says community, says justice. He changes the channel. Static answers. Sometimes static is the only honest witness. The phone rings. Detective. Rooker's truck found abandoned 15 miles north, near the old logging yard. No plates, engine warm. Inside, a single object, a new cassette, label blank. They play it at the station. The sound is close, claustrophobic, wind, heavy breathing. Then words, slow, measured, not quite threat, not quite confession. You keep digging, you'll find holes that aren't yours. A pause, then quieter. He wasn't the first. I wasn't the last. The tape ends with a laugh that never finishes. Cut clean, mid-breath. The lights flicker once as if the power grid flinched. The detective looks up, throat dry. The sheriff stares at the player like it might exhale more if they wait long enough. Morning brings fog again. It presses against windows like an animal that wants in. The lake is still, the ridge empty, but people swear they hear whistling in the trees before dawn. 3 notes, always the same. Maybe wind, maybe memory, maybe something walking the line between. The DJ keeps playing Lena's song at 12:03 because tradition is the closest thing this town has to control. When the record crackles, it sounds like rain on tin roofs again, like the first night of 1991. Graybridge learns another truth the hard way. Solved is not safe. Every key opens more than one door. Rain comes back to Graybridge like a verdict that forgot its period. It starts as a mist that softens the roofs, then deepens until gutters choke and alleys sing. The sheriff's yard floods ankle deep. His wife tells him it smells like 1991 again. He nods, doesn't answer. Inside, the tape player sits on the table like an altar. The blank cassette they found in Rooker's truck spins under new hands at the state lab, and what it yields isn't blank after all. Beneath the breathing and the laugh, there's another track, faint, layered like a ghost under wallpaper. Footsteps in gravel, a door hinge, then a sentence, half whispered like a rehearsal. Same place, same water. The rest will follow. The lab isolates background noise, a hum from sodium lights, a frog chorus, the slow rhythmic churn of a generator. The detective matches it to field recordings he's been collecting since the first case broke. He's obsessive that way. He recognizes the signature instantly. Alder Lake Dam. The auxiliary gate area. Restricted now, fenced with warning signs that say government instead of danger. He calls the sheriff. They meet there by dawn. Headlights slicing fog that looks like cigarette smoke that decided to settle down and live here. The dam's caretaker is a man who's been there since the Reagan years, face carved by wind, eyes suspicious of anyone under 60. He unlocks the gate, gestures toward the platform. You won't find much, he says. Water level's low, but it keeps its own counsel. They walk the edge where concrete meets the artificial cliff of the reservoir. Birds spin lazy circles above, indifferent. The sheriff scans the silted shoreline, beer cans, driftwood, a bicycle frame like a fossil of movement. The detective crouches near the generator shed, listens. The same low hum, the same pitch as on the tape. He points to a vent grate crusted with rust. That's our echo, he says. He was here. They shine lights inside, cobwebs like lace, a set of footprints smaller than boots, larger than shoes, rubber soles, the kind sold at any hardware store. One print overlaps another, newer. The detective photographs each, labels them with the ritual care of someone baptizing ghosts. Behind the generator, half buried in mud, they find something blue again, a tarp. He almost laughs at the repetition until he lifts it and sees the shape beneath. It's not a body, it's a bin, smaller than before, heavier with time, the label on the lid worn to indecision. They pry it open under the sodium lights. Inside, clothing, brittle, folded once and forgotten. A badge, corroded beyond recognition. A paper ID tag from the cabins, typed, name erased by mold. At the bottom, a cassette. No label this time, just a strip of red tape across one corner. The detective doesn't breathe until the sheriff says, "Get the van, we're done here." Back at the station, they play it, static again. Then a voice that isn't the handyman's, isn't Rooker's either. Deeper, older, words chewed like tobacco. You're walking through a circle, boys. Every door leads to water. Every water's the same. A metallic clang. Then silence. The sheriff stops the tape, rewinds, listens again. It's a riddle pretending to be a confession. The detective rubs his temples, murmurs, he's quoting something. They run it through a database. No match. Until the sheriff remembers an old sermon, a line from a church 2 towns over that burned down in '94. He who hides under water will not rise without weight. The preacher who said it was found drowned in a well, his death ruled suicide. His assistant vanished the same week, Samuel Rooker's cousin. The loop tightens. They dig through county archives, papers that crumble like pastry. The preacher's assistant was a handyman too. Same tools, same trade, different county. The church where he worked backed up onto a stream that fed into Alder Lake. The congregation disbanded after the scandal, most families moving north to Graybridge for jobs at the mill. The retired sheriff flips through old rosters. One surname repeats, the handyman's. His father was on that list, his uncle too. The family moved to the cabins the summer before Lena vanished. History begins to rhyme. The detective sketches it on the board, lines and arrows that start to look like a spider's patience. The handyman wasn't inventing his ritual, he was continuing it. Rooker wasn't an apprentice, he was kin. The cold case solved headline folds in on itself. What if solved is just a comma? They drive to the preacher's old church site. It's a field now, weeds and rusted fence. But beneath the weeds, foundation stones hold their geometry. The sheriff taps one with his boot and hears hollow under the ring. They dig where the earth sounds thin. Under 2 feet of soil, a trapdoor made of iron rusted into a bruise. The hinges scream when pried open. A staircase descends into black. The detective clicks his flashlight and says, "No one builds basements for sermons." The air inside is damp, full of the metallic sweetness of rot. The stairs lead to a room small enough to hear your pulse double. On one wall, initials carved in wet concrete that never dried right. H.H., the handyman's father. Below, R.R., Rooker's. And a third, L.H. The detective's hand shakes. Lena Hart. But the carving is too old. The concrete's aging says decades. Someone added her initials later, tracing what was already there, folding her into their ritual like a signature. They find shelves with jars, buttons, coins, nails, bits of lives too ordinary to mean anything unless you know who collected them. In the corner, a lantern still half full of kerosene, wick blackened. Beside it, a notebook sealed in wax. They break it open. Pages filled with cramped writing, words running in circles. Under water, she sleeps. Under light, she listens. Each one must watch the next. No names, no dates, but drawings, bridges, cabins, lakes, all connected by arrows pointing inward, toward a single shape, a spiral. The sheriff closes it, whispers, "We're not chasing a man anymore, we're chasing an inheritance." When they come out, the rain has stopped. The air feels rinsed but wrong, too still. A pickup waits by the gate, engine idling. For a second, the detective's chest tightens. Rooker, but the driver's face is unfamiliar, older, wearing the polite mask of someone trying not to look like trouble. He says he's the property owner, came because the alarm tripped. The sheriff thanks him, asks for ID. He hands over a wallet. The name reads Caleb Rooker, brother, the last living branch. They bring him in for questioning. Polite at first. He says he hasn't spoken to Sam in years, thought he was dead. Moved to Idaho, runs a scrapyard. But his hands betray him, scarred in ways only rope or wire leaves. When asked about the tapes, he flinches before he smiles. Those old things? My dad used to record everything. Said it was a way to talk to God. They play him the newest tape, the voice that says, "Every door leads to water." Caleb doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, just stares at the table, then softly, "That ain't my dad, that's me." He laughs once, hollow. "We all tried to bury him, and you keep digging him up." The sheriff leans forward. "So finish it. Tell us what you buried." Caleb's eyes dart toward the window. Rain starts again, a thin hiss. "You won't stop. You think one man makes a pattern? He was the start, not the system. You pull one root, the tree bleeds." They press, but he closes. Lawyer. Silence. The detective steps out, heartbeat punching his ribs. The sheriff watches through the glass, the two of them framed by the hum of fluorescent light and a storm that refuses to leave. In that moment, it hits him. The thing about cold cases isn't the cold. It's that once they thaw, everything around them melts too. Outside, lightning forks over Alder Lake, white and merciless. The reflection in the water splits into dozens of branches, each one reaching towards something buried. And in the radio room, unattended, the blank tape spins again on its own, whispering its loop of breath and rain and a single word rising through static like a prayer that doesn't want to be heard. More. Thunder wakes the town before dawn. Not a crash, more a long, rolling growl that makes windows tremble like they're remembering something. The sheriff doesn't sleep anymore. He's been sitting by the phone since midnight, waiting for it to ring with either a confession or another ghost. The detective pulls into the station lot with coffee gone cold, rain slicing the headlights into white knives. Inside, Caleb Rooker sits in an interview room that smells like wet metal and time. His wrists rest calmly on the table. He hasn't asked for a cigarette, hasn't looked at the mirror. He just stares at his reflection in the one-way glass like he's memorizing the man everyone else thinks he is. The sheriff enters, sits opposite, sets a tape recorder between them, not to intimidate, just habit. "Tell me about your father," he says. Caleb smirks. "Which one?" The question lands wrong. The detective glances up from his notes. "You mean biologically or spiritually?" Caleb shrugs. "Same thing, if you ask the men who built that basement." His voice slides between calm and sermon, every syllable rehearsed somewhere in the dark. "You think you've solved something. You haven't solved it. You've interrupted it." The sheriff folds his hands. "Then help us stop it properly." Caleb tilts his head, almost pitying. "You can't stop a weather pattern. You can only wait until it moves on." He leans forward, whispering now. He recorded everything because he didn't want to forget the order. The others did too. It was never about killing. It was about remembering. "Remembering what?" the detective asks. Caleb smiles, but it's not amusement. It's fatigue disguised as prophecy. Who we were before the river started talking back. He won't say more. He won't lawyer up again. He just sits, smiling at some private apocalypse only he can hear. When they step outside, the sheriff lights a cigarette even though he quit years ago. The detective stares through the rain. "You believe him?" "I believe patterns," the sheriff says. "People are just how they hide." That afternoon, the lab calls. The soil in Caleb's boots isn't from Alder Lake. It's from a quarry 30 miles north, different from the one where they found the bin. Smaller, forgotten, closed since the 90s. They find it on the map, a wound of red clay shaped like a fingerprint. The detective feels his pulse align with the rain. He grabs his jacket. The drive north is a blur of gray highway and static radio. Trees fold over the road like a mouth about to speak. When they reach the quarry, fog hovers low, thick enough to erase edges. The place looks abandoned, fences rusted, a sign half swallowed by moss, Cedar Hollow Aggregate Como closed 1995. They cut the padlock. The air inside tastes like dust and electricity. They walk the perimeter. At first, nothing, just rain filling potholes, an old loader sinking into mud. Then the dog whines. The cadaver dog's tail stiffens, nose pressed to a mound near the old way station. The detective kneels, brushes soil away with his gloves. Underneath, plastic again. Blue, always blue. He exhales like a confession. They dig carefully, slow, deliberate. The tarp gives way to a wooden crate bound with wire. The sheriff squints. This one's older, not factory, handmade. They pry it open. Inside, bones again, but smaller, child-sized. The room of the quarry, if such a thing exists, seems to hold its breath. A necklace, pink plastic beads faded to ghost colors, lies in the dirt. The detective's throat tightens. "She's not ours," he says softly. "Someone else's girl." They seal the site, call the state team. But before the van doors close, he notices something glinting in the mud beside the hole. A coin. Foreign, not American. Canadian. 1988. He pockets it without thinking, instinctively, like holding proof before paperwork ruins it. Back at the station, Caleb's cell is empty. Guard swears he never saw him leave. Camera feed loops itself, static for 8 minutes straight. When it returns, the chair's empty, handcuffs on the floor, bent but not broken. The sheriff's mouth goes dry. Check the perimeter. Nothing. Rain still falling. No tracks. They review the footage frame by frame. A flicker before the static. Caleb glancing toward the ceiling vent. A faint whistle escaping his mouth. 3 notes. The same ones the town's been hearing in the trees. Then the screen cuts. By morning, the fog has moved down into the streets. Power flickers. The DJ tries to run the 12:03 segment again, but halfway through the song, a different audio bleeds in, a voice saying, "Cold case solved. Arrest shocks community." The exact headline from years ago, except no one is reading it now. It's playing by itself. A recording of their own triumph, looped and warped. Then, beneath it, another voice, Caleb's maybe, whispering, "You keep replaying the past until it learns to breathe again." The station phones light up with reports. Strangers by the river, footprints by the church ruins, lights flickering in the storage yard. The sheriff drives to Alder Lake one more time. The water is higher than yesterday. At the far bank, something white floats, a tarp maybe, or a memory trying to surface. He shines the beam across and sees a man standing waist-deep in the shallows, still as driftwood, face pale in the moonlight. For a second, he thinks it's Caleb, but when the man turns, it isn't. Younger, thinner, a face from nowhere. He smiles like recognition and disappears beneath the water without a ripple. The sheriff lowers the light. The wind moves over the lake, whispering 3 notes that used to be a whistle and now sound like a question. Behind him, the detective's radio crackles. "Sheriff, you copy? We found something behind the old dam shack. You'd better come see this." He turns. In the distance, red and blue flash against the fog, smeared like bruises on the air. He drives back, heart thudding with that old, awful rhythm, the one that once meant chase now means repeat. Behind the shack, half buried in silt, is a steel locker, military issue, padlocked. The detective hands him the key they took from Caleb's belongings, the same one that started all this, the one that opened Unit 12. The sheriff hesitates, feels the cold metal in his palm. "You ready?" the detective asks. He nods once. The key turns smooth, practiced, inevitable. The lock clicks, the door groans open, and the smell that escapes is older than any calendar. Inside are cassette tapes, dozens of them, each labeled by year, 1974, 1981, 1987, 1991, 2003. The sheriff stares, realizing there was never one case. There were eras, generations, each tape another voice recording its chapter in the same hymn of disappearance. The rain hammers the roof. The detective whispers, "How many people do you think we actually caught?" The sheriff answers without looking up. "Maybe one, maybe none." And somewhere, miles away, under a bridge that creaks with age, the water hums a familiar tune, 3 notes, soft, patient, waiting for the next voice to join. The rain stops suddenly, like someone shut off a faucet at the edge of the sky. The silence it leaves behind is wrong. Too clean, too sudden. The kind of quiet that makes your skin think before your mind does. The sheriff stands over the open locker, staring at the tapes lined like vertebrae, their spines marked with years he doesn't want to count. The detective kneels, takes one, 1974, and holds it up to the flickering light. The handwriting is the same as on the others, careful, slanted, deliberate, the same script from the handyman's boxes, the same hand, or someone who learned it. He slides it into a recorder. The reels turn, creaking like old floorboards. Static first, always static, then a voice, not the handyman. Older, slower, deeper, a man dictating notes, maybe. "We took the first one near the falls. I told them water keeps better than fire. Fire leaves ash, water leaves echo." The sheriff feels his stomach tighten. The voice continues. "They thought it was over. But the river doesn't end. It hides under names. We move when the mill does. Always the same lake, the same code, the same order. The detective stops the tape. Same order, he repeats. Like instructions. The sheriff doesn't answer. He's staring at the labels. 1974, 1981, 1987, 1991, 2003, 2010. The gaps between years aren't random. They're intervals. He takes out his notebook, writes the numbers down, spaces them evenly. 7 years between each, except for the last 2. The pattern falters, then accelerates. Every 7 years until it couldn't wait anymore, he mutters. He picks up the newest tape, 2010. Its case is cracked. Inside, a scrap of paper folded so tight it looks like a seed. He unfolds it carefully. A single sentence written in blue pen. Next rain, next mouth, next voice. He stares at it, hears thunder in his head even though the sky is empty. The detective whispers, "Sir." The labels, look at this. He points at the edges of the cassettes. Tiny red notches cut into the plastic. 1 notch on 1974, 2 on 1981, 3 on 1987, up to 6 on 2003. The 2010 tape has 7. A countdown or a count up. Either way, something that was building toward now. They bag everything, call the state office, request secure transport. The request vanishes into bureaucracy. Too many forms, too much rain damage, too little patience. So they keep the tapes in the evidence locker overnight. That night, the sheriff dreams of water. Not drowning, waiting. He's standing on the dam in 1991 again, flashlight shaking, fog closing. A voice behind him whispers, "Every door leads to water." He turns, but there's no one. Only the sound of a cassette clicking and the soft splash of something being dropped where sound shouldn't travel. He wakes before dawn. The station is dark except for the blue hum of emergency lights. Power's out again. The detective's car is gone. His desk is open, drawers spilled like he left mid-sentence. The sheriff grabs a flashlight, moves down the corridor, his breath fogging in front of him. The evidence room door hangs ajar. Inside, the locker's open, empty. Every tape gone except the one still in the recorder, 1974. He presses play, static. Then the same deep voice, barely audible over the hiss. "If you're hearing this, it means the circle chose another. You don't break it, you just change places." Then silence. He drives to the dam. The fog's waiting for him, sitting low on the water like memory. The tire tracks on the gravel are fresh. He follows them past the gate, past the generator shed, to the platform overlooking the reservoir. The detective's car is there, headlights off, driver's door open, engine idling. On the hood sits a portable tape recorder. He approaches slowly. The recorder's light is on. The reel spins, but there's no sound. He hits rewind. It whirs, stops, play. Now it's the detective's voice, calm, breath steady, speaking like he's reading from somewhere. "You were right. The pattern isn't history. It's design. I think it's been passed, not inherited, like someone keeps giving it to whoever listens too long." A pause. "I shouldn't have played the others. I shouldn't have gone back to the church. The floor was different. Someone's been there. The initials changed again. HHRRLH, now DK. His initials." The sheriff grips the hood until his knuckles pale. The tape crackles again. "If I'm gone, don't look in the water. Don't look at the next rain. Every time someone listens, it starts again." A sound follows, splash, breath, then the recorder cutting off mid-word. The sheriff stares at the still lake. It looks smooth, almost kind. Then something moves, ripples circling outward from the center, slow and deliberate. He backs away, calls the radio. "Dispatch, I need..." But static floods the channel, a long shriek like feedback bleeding into a hum. Then, faintly, over the static, 3 notes whistled low and perfect. He turns back toward the car. The passenger seat holds the detective's badge, drenched, and next to it one of the missing tapes, a new label, 2025, handwriting familiar enough to make his hands tremble. He doesn't touch it. He just stares as the rain begins again. Soft at first, then harder, steady, the same rhythm as a heartbeat sinking to something older. He thinks of the note, next rain, next mouth, next voice. The sheriff steps away from the car, looks at the sky, and for the first time since 1991, he feels afraid not of what's in the water, but of what's waiting to speak through it. Far down the road, the radio station flickers back to life. The DJ cues the same song at 12:03, but the recording glitches. A man's voice, unmistakably the detective's, slides into the melody, whispering, "Cold case reopened." Then the tape clicks, the broadcast cuts, and the town, for a long time, stops breathing. Graybridge wakes to an unfinished morning. The rain has stopped, but the clouds haven't left, just settled low enough to press against rooftops like waiting hands. The sheriff hasn't gone home in 48 hours. His uniform smells like rust and old coffee. He stands on the dam again, same place, same cold air, staring at the lake that keeps choosing to remember for everyone else. The detective's car is still there, empty. The badge sealed in a plastic evidence bag, the new tape marked 2025 sealed next to it. He hasn't played it yet. He's not sure he wants to. The lab van pulls up from the city, headlights dim, tires chewing gravel like teeth. A young technician hops out, fresh eyes, wrong kind of optimism. "You really think it's another one?" she asks. The sheriff doesn't answer. He's watching the lake the way you watch a stranger try to recognize you. "We'll get a clean print," she says, trying to fill the air. Maybe the same handwriting again. They don't find any prints. They don't find any handwriting either. The ink on the 2025 label is smeared as if written underwater. The technician bags it anyway, seals it twice, and promises to drive it straight to Salem for analysis. But she never makes it out of the county. An hour later, her van is found idling at a turnout 5 miles from Graybridge. Driver's door open, radio humming white noise. The passenger seat empty. Only the tape remains, sitting where she'd left it, warm to the touch, like it had been played even though the recorder is off. By noon, the power flickers across town. Phones go dead. The radio station cuts in and out. Between the static, voices leak through. Old broadcasts, fragments of news reports, even the sheriff's own voice from years ago. Cold case solved. Arrest shocks community. Then laughter. Not human laughter. Metallic, distant, threaded with the sound of running water. The sheriff drives into town. The main street looks like it's waiting for a parade that never comes. Storefront lights blink in sync with the failing grid. The DJ's voice finally returns, shaken but professional. "Folks, we're having some transmission issues this morning. Stay indoors until the weather clears. And if you hear anything unusual on the frequency, please don't respond." He parks outside the diner. Inside, the locals sit in silence, eyes fixed on the muted television. The old footage plays again. Lena Hart's photograph, the press conference, the headline, but beneath it, a new caption scrolls in a language the sheriff doesn't recognize, white text moving backward. Someone shuts it off. The air feels heavier without the noise. He walks to the evidence locker, opens it, and stares at the gap where the tapes used to sit. All that's left are water stains spreading outward like bruises. He doesn't remember the leaks ever reaching this far. He kneels. The floor is damp, the smell, iron, algae, electricity. The same smell from Alder Lake, the same smell from the church basement. He touches the puddle. It's not rainwater, it's warm. Not. That night he sits alone in his truck outside the dam, the tape on the passenger seat like a heartbeat waiting for permission. He turns the key halfway. The dash light flickers. He presses play. At first, silence, then breathing. Not one person, many. Layered, overlapping, murmuring words he can't separate. The sound swells, deepens, becomes rhythm. Then one voice rises above the rest. The detective's. "You should have left it closed, Sheriff. It doesn't stop. Every time we tell the story, it learns our names." The tape whines, the sound changes. Now it's the handyman's voice, then Lena's mother's, then a child's, soft, echoing, saying underwater she sleeps. The sheriff's hand trembles. He shuts it off, throws open the door, and steps into the cold. The fog has returned, thicker than ever. It rolls across the dam, swallowing the floodlights, swallowing the sound of the truck. He walks toward the railing, flashlight slicing small, useless holes in the dark. For a moment he sees movement on the water, a figure, hair plastered, eyes open, standing where no one could stand. It's the detective, or what's left of him, holding something that glints under the weak light. A cassette. The sheriff calls his name once. The figure tilts its head, like listening for a frequency. Then it speaks, voice carried through fog and static. It's recording again. He runs to the railing, light shaking. The figure's gone. Only ripples remain, slow and deliberate, widening until the lake surface returns to glass. The flashlight beam catches something floating near the edge. A cassette, red tape across the corner, identical to the rest. He leans down, scoops it up. Water drips from its reels, but it feels heavier than it should, as if the lake itself refused to let go. He drives back to the station in silence. The sky hangs low, humming faintly. The whole town hums now, a vibration in the air like static without a source. The sheriff sets the tape on his desk and watches it. He can almost hear it spinning, though it's not in a player. His phone buzzes, a text with no number attached. 3 words. Next rain soon. He looks out the window. The clouds are building again, black and close. Somewhere down the street, the DJ's transmitter squeals alive, and a voice, not his own, says clearly into the static, "Oregon cold case solved. Sheriff missing in storm." The lights die. The tape clicks once, twice, then the recorder starts by itself. The reels turn. The voice that comes through is his. "Graybridge," it says, tired, heavy, almost breaking. This is how it starts again. The rain begins. The rain doesn't fall straight this time. It drifts sideways, carried by wind that hums through the streets like an electrical current searching for ground. The sheriff's voice, his own, but wrong, keeps playing from the recorder, even though the device isn't plugged in. He stands in the dark station, water crawling under the door, and hears himself narrate a story he hasn't lived yet. Gray Bridge, 2025. Power outages, rising water levels, missing persons. It's happening again. He stares at the tape. It spins slower than before, as if savoring every word. He reaches for it, but the metal burns his fingers. A sharp hiss, like steam, fills the room. The smell of ozone and wet soil thickens until it feels alive. He backs away, heart beating in his throat. The puddles on the floor ripple, not from the rain, but from something beneath, pressing upward. He pulls his gun out of habit, though he doesn't know what he plans to shoot. The door creaks. Someone standing in the hallway. A silhouette, tall, motionless. For a moment he hopes it's the detective, alive, soaked, half smiling the way he did after long nights. But the shape doesn't move right. It flickers, like film skipping frames. The sheriff steps closer, flashlight shaking. The beam catches a face that isn't a face, wet, blurred. The features shifting between people he's known. Lena, Caleb, the handyman, himself. They fade and return like breath against glass. Then the voice comes again, layered from every mouth that's ever spoken through a recorder. It's not the water you should fear. It's the silence after. He fires. The muzzle flash lights the hallway for half a heartbeat. The figure doesn't fall. It collapses inward, like being swallowed by shadow. The echo of the shot bounces too long, repeating in impossible patterns. The sound doesn't die. It loops, syncing perfectly with the faint hiss of the rain. The sheriff runs outside. The town is awake, but not alive. Streetlights flicker. Radios scream with overlapping broadcasts. 1991, 2003, 2010. The same headlines repeating in different voices. News anchors who've been dead for years. Cold cases solved. Arrest shocks community. Missing girl. Mysterious tapes. Every line feeding into every frequency until the air itself sounds like confession. He drives to Alder Lake. The road floods in places he's never seen water before. Houses glow with the blue pulse of static from televisions that turn themselves on. The closer he gets, the louder the hum grows, a low vibration that turns the steering wheel warm in his hands. When he reaches the dam, the floodlights are already out. The water line has risen past the concrete lip. The lake is alive, that's the only word for it. It's not rippling, it's breathing. Each swell moves like an inhale, drawing the fog closer. In the distance, shapes float, too still to be debris. He shines his light and they drift together. Tarp, rope, boxes, a wheel rim, a child's necklace. Every piece they ever pulled from the water has come back, bobbing just beneath the surface. And above them, suspended in the reflection of the dam lights, faces shimmer in the water. Not ghosts, not clear enough for comfort, faces that look up, waiting for him to speak first. Behind him, an engine hums. A truck approaches through the rain. He recognizes the sound before he sees the headlights, an old Chevy with a squeaky rear leaf spring, Rooker's truck. But Rooker's been gone for years. The vehicle stops a few yards away. The door opens. A man steps out, drenched, calm, carrying a recorder in one hand and something else in the other, a tape marked 2026. He places it gently on the hood. "It doesn't end, Sheriff," he says. The voice is soft, familiar, the detective. "We only keep handing it over." The sheriff stares. "Where have you been?" "Below," the detective says. "You should have stopped listening." He drops the tape into the floodwater, and for a second the reels turn underwater, spinning perfectly, bubbles rising like static made visible. Then the detective smiles once, tired, and walks straight into the lake until the water closes over his head. The ripples vanish instantly, as if he'd been erased. The sheriff steps forward but stops at the edge. The tape floats back toward him, bumping gently against his boot. He picks it up. It's warm, humming faintly. The red label peels away, revealing another name beneath, written years ago, his own. He drives back to town in silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of water dripping somewhere inside the car. At the station, the power's still out. The clock on the wall reads 12:03. He sits at his desk, staring at the tape, fingers hovering over the player. The recorder seems to wait for him, the reels glinting in the lightning flashes. He presses play. At first, only rain, then his own voice again, identical, whispering into the microphone. "This is Sheriff James Porter, Gray Bridge County, Oregon, 1991, cold case solved. Case reopened, no further comment." Then static, then another voice, childlike, distant. "Underwater, she sleeps." The recorder stops by itself. The reels click backward, rewind, play again without his touch. The voice repeats, slower this time, as though the words are sinking. He picks up the tape, opens the door, steps outside into the rain. The whole town hums again, power lines vibrating, televisions flickering through windows, every screen showing the same image, Alder Lake, empty, flat, waiting. He walks down Main Street, through the flooded intersection, toward the bridge. The fog closes around him. Somewhere, a siren wails and cuts out mid-note. He reaches the center of the bridge and stops. The recorder in his hand starts spinning on its own. He looks down at the black water and sees himself reflected, mouth moving though he's not speaking. The reflection whispers, "Next voice." He drops the tape. It vanishes soundlessly. The recorder in his hand keeps turning. A red light blinks. The rain returns harder than before, hammering the surface until all reflections break apart. And above the storm, over every radio, every static line, every abandoned frequency, one voice rises, a blend of his, the detectives, Lena's, Caleb's, all folding into one sentence, broadcast to nowhere. Cold case continues, Graybridge missing again. And the water answers quietly, patiently, with a sound that might be breathing or might be applause. The next morning, Graybridge wakes without a sky, just a ceiling of white noise like the town's inside a radio, still looking for a signal. No birds, no wind, no sound, but the soft pulse of rain that doesn't hit the ground. It evaporates before landing. The streets are empty, doors ajar, televisions flickering with their own light. Headlines crawl across every screen in perfect unison. Oregon 1991 cold case solved. Sheriff missing in storm, but no one wrote it. The local paper hasn't printed for weeks. The station hasn't broadcast since the power died. The words are just there, self-sustaining, looping like a memory too proud to fade. Down by Alder Lake, the dam groans in its sleep. Water swells against the spillway, darker than usual, almost metallic. A pair of highway workers spot a truck parked by the railing. The sheriff's door open, engine drowned. Inside, his badge, his notebook, his gun, and a cassette marked 2027. The label's handwriting has changed again, each letter tilted wrong, written by a hand learning to imitate itself. The tape finds its way to the evidence room on its own, chain of custody unreadable. The state police arrive with polite efficiency, men in clean raincoats, eyes trained not to look at the lake too long. They seal the station, catalog what's left. Shelves warped by humidity, lockers streaked with rust, puddles reflecting a light that isn't overhead. In the corner, the recorder still hums, plugged into nothing. One of the officers leans close. "It's spinning," he says. Another shrugs. "Let it." They play the new tape. The voice that speaks is calm, composed, official. Graybridge County Sheriff's Department, October 12, 2025. Status update. Following the disappearance of Detective Klein and Sheriff Porter, search efforts continue around Alder Lake. So far, a pause, a soft inhale, then quieter. So far, the pattern remains. Another voice overlaps, a woman this time, uncertain. "Sir, who is this recording for?" "For whoever answers next," the man says. Then the audio breaks, swells into static. Beneath it, the sound of water pouring somewhere close, rhythmic and endless. When the noise fades, another clip begins. Muffled conversation, boots over gravel, a metallic clink, laughter that belongs in a bar, not an investigation. A door creaks. A man whispers, "We're late, they've already started." The officer stops the tape. The room is silent except for the rain hitting the window panes like fingertips. "It's mixed," he mutters. "Fragments. Field audio from years apart. But the timestamps on the file label don't lie. They all read the same day, the same hour. That night, the team camps in the station. The wind rises. Radios buzz even when switched off. One officer swears he hears a child humming through the wall. Another claims the puddle by the door moved, inching closer every time he looked away. At midnight, the power grid coughs back to life for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to light every bulb, every monitor, every dead phone screen, and in each a reflection of the lake. The surface is smooth, too smooth, and something stirs beneath it like an animal turning in sleep. At 12:03, the clock over the dispatcher's desk clicks louder than it should. The recorder on the table wakes itself again. The reels spin backward this time, a slow rewind that fills the air with a heartbeat's rhythm. The young officer who started the tape before, his name's Rains, leans in, voice trembling. "Maybe we should stop it." The senior investigator shakes his head. "We're already in it." The reels stop. Play. Static blooms, then clears. It's the sheriff's voice again, not from before, but now. "If you're hearing this, I'm under. Don't pull me out. It wants to finish." A ripple of sound, water rushing, a body moving, then another voice cuts in, distant, layered with the hiss. Next rain, next voice, next mouth. Rain stumbles backward, knocks over a chair. The recording keeps playing. The voices multiply. Dozens, hundreds, every name tied to the case. Lena's mother praying. The handyman muttering coordinates, the detective laughing softly, then a new one, Rains, whispering in real time, "Turn it off." The others hear it, see his lips moving, but the sound comes from the tape, not from him. The senior investigator lunges for the player, slaps the stop button, the reels freeze, the room exhales, but in the silence afterward, the rain stops outside and the station smells of lake water. The puddle by the door is gone. At dawn, the station is empty again. Patrol cars sit idling, radios hissing. Rains' uniform hangs on a chair, soaked. His notebook remains open on the desk, last line written in hurried ink. Same lake, same order, same year. The 2027 tape is gone. In its place sits a new one, unmarked, still dripping. When the state troopers return that evening, the power has stabilized. The clock over the dispatcher's desk reads 12:03 and doesn't move. They find the recorder running on a loop, speaker crackling with the faint sound of rain, even though the day outside is cloudless. Then a headline begins to form in the static, syllables arranging themselves into a sentence no one wrote. Oregon 2027 cold case solved. Entire task force missing at Alder Lake. They try to turn it off. The switch refuses. The reel spins on, whispering through the hiss. Next rain, next mouth, next voice. And outside, the wind rises again, not from the west, but from the lake, carrying the smell of wet earth and static. On the surface, bubbles break like punctuation, one after another, as if something beneath is learning how to breathe. Morning never really arrives, just a dim gray that feels borrowed, a color the sun forgot. The town of Graybridge looks drained, as if someone unplugged it overnight. Storefront windows are fogged from the inside. Streetlights blink out of rhythm. Somewhere under all that damp silence, the lake waits, a mirror turned over. The official report says the investigation is suspended. The state troopers are gone, their cars left idling at the edge of the dam until fuel became memory. What remains inside the station is a voice. The tape deck hums again, steady, polite, waiting. On every desk lies a damp notebook, and on every first page is the same sentence, written in different hands. The water remembers names that people forget. They say sound travels faster underwater, that a whisper can cross a mile if it wants to. Maybe that's why the radio starts speaking again before the power returns. The signal is faint, breaking in and out, but every few seconds a phrase rises above the static. Cold case reopened. Graybridge flooding. Recording continues. A car door slams outside. Footsteps. Then a voice at the doorway. Shaky. Wet. Anyone here? It's Rains. His uniform sticks to his skin, soaked, his eyes wide like he's just woken from drowning. He's carrying something wrapped in plastic, a cassette, unlabeled except for a smear of red tape. His voice cracks. It came back. It was on the dock this morning. He sets it on the desk, then notices the others' notebooks. The same sentence repeated, his own handwriting among them. Dated yesterday. He shakes his head. I didn't write that. The sheriff's chair is still there, empty, but turned slightly toward the window. Rains glances at it and lowers his voice. I heard him, under the water. He said we never left. He presses play. The tape hisses, then breathing, then a single word. Again. After that, the same voice, his own, reporting calmly. Graybridge County, October 13th, 2027. Confirmed recurrence of event pattern. Lake level rising. No response from Salem Command. Transmissions looping, requesting containment. Static eats the rest. Rains ejects the cassette, hands shaking. That's not me. I've never... He stops when he hears it, the faint drip behind him, water crawling down the wall, tracing letters as it moves. Same order. The words stretch until they reach the floor, spreading into a puddle that reflects more than the room. It shows the bridge, the trestle, the riverbank, all in motion, all filmed from above. Someone's watching through the water. He stumbles back, grabs his radio. The line's dead, filled with a low hum like breathing through metal. Then softly a woman's voice. Do you hear it too? Lena, not possible. The sound is so clear it cuts the air. They listen, Rains. That's all they ever needed. Someone to listen. The lights flicker, then hold. The puddle on the floor ripples once, twice, then stills. When he looks again, it's just water. Ordinary, harmless, reflecting the ceiling's flicker. But in the reflection, he isn't alone. The sheriff stands beside him, pale, soaked, eyes calm. He reaches for the recorder, presses play again. The reels turn, voices layer like sediment, old, new, real, remembered. The handyman's whisper, the preacher's sermon, Lena's laugh, Caleb's drawl, the detective's apology. Then the sheriff's voice, steady, tired. We don't solve cases here, we become them. The recorder clicks off by itself. Silence. Outside, thunder rolls. The rain starts, gentle at first. The clock above the dispatcher's desk twitches, stutters, then jumps forward to 12:03. Every phone in town rings once and stops. The static on the radio aligns into a single sentence, repeated in every voice Graybridge has ever lost. Oregon cold case solved. Recording complete. Rains turns toward the window. Through the glass he sees Alder Lake glowing faintly, the surface smooth as skin, the reflection of the town shimmering upside down. He can't tell if it's sunrise or something else pretending to be light. He steps closer, whispers, "What now?" The answer comes from everywhere, the speakers, the rain, the floor beneath his boots. Next rain, next mouth, next voice. He feels water soak through the floorboards, rising just enough to touch his ankles, then his knees, then higher. The recorder spins one last time, slow and perfect. Outside, the lake swells until it meets the town. Every window becomes a mirror, every street a reflection, and in every reflection, Graybridge keeps speaking, telling and retelling its own story, voice over voice, until time folds around it like fog closing over water. Oregon, 1991 cold case solved, the radio whispers again, calm, certain, endless. And beneath the surface, in the dark that remembers everything, the reels keep turning.